Mir, let us know.
A couple seconds. Okay, good to go.
All right. Thank you, viewing audience and fellow board members, presenters, and all those in attendance, both in person and virtually this evening. Welcome to the June 8th work session for the Buffalo Board of Education. Tonight, we have educational support followed by student achievement. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the co-chairperson for educational support, Mr. Lawrence Scott. Larry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Petrucci. I just want to quickly, and I don't know if Dr. Williams had something planned as well, but maybe in the next meeting, just really recognize Dr. Fatima Morel, who was chosen, or we found out was chosen today as one of several innovative teachers. It's the first time Time is selecting innovative teachers. And she's been selected as one of the most innovative educators of the year for creating and implementing an anti-racist curriculum while leading the Office of Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Initiatives that provide students with a learning experience that promotes equity and an appreciation of different perspectives. I think this is an outstanding recognition, well-deserved by Dr. Morel. I don't know if she's on, but just a huge praise to her and her work, especially at a time that it's needed more than ever, based on local and national events that have occurred. Okay, with that said, I want to turn it over to Dr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I'm on the phone, and thank you so much for that. Just so awesome recognition. I appreciate it so much, and I also appreciate just the unwavering support of our board members and our superintendent that allows this work to be sustained and to continue in our district. So thank you so much.
You are very welcome, and for those that are listening, I highly recommend that you read the interview in Time Magazine. I will post it on my social media. I did on Twitter. I'll do it on Facebook later today. It's a very insightful interview at a very critical time. So with that said, we now have a presentation, one that I'm excited about, that we've been waiting for some time now, in regards to the potential pilot of a 3-year-old preschool. And let me just preface this before I turn it over to Dr. Williams for remarks, and then to Dave Rust, Executive Director of Say Yes Buffalo. We know, and the research has shown, that good preschool programming it provides good outcomes, long-term outcomes for students and then as they become adults. We are grateful here in the city of Buffalo and Buffalo Public Schools to have a full day pre-K 4 program in almost, I believe, all of our elementary schools. My own boys benefited greatly from it, especially socially and emotionally. And the research has shown over and over that those that attend good quality preschool programs, that they're less likely to be suspended in high school, less likely to be sentenced to juvenile incarceration, more likely to graduate from high school, enroll in college, and graduate from college. And what's also critical is that these positive effects are found across racial groups and income groups. Also across gender, but with larger effect on male students. And it seems as if from the research that's been done that the biggest benefit are social emotional skills. And as I mentioned, I saw it firsthand with my own boys. So I believe, especially for those students that need that early intervention, instruction, and support, that this can be a game changer for many of our students and families here in the city of Buffalo. So I will now turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Williams for her opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Board Co-Chairperson Scott. This is a really innovative and exciting time for the Buffalo schools. Kudos to Dr. Morrell. That is absolutely huge. To be recognized by Time Magazine, that's huge. And, you know, to follow up with this exciting presentation, I'm really excited because our district really focuses on making sure that we're supporting the whole school, whole community, and the whole child. We've embraced that model. That's the framework from the CDC. That's a best practice. And so what we know is that, you know, Say Yes is our strategic partner. And this is a program that could not only focus on the cognitive skills and improving those skills for students, but, you know, the physical, the social, the emotional skills. And what it can do is to change generations to come for these 3-year-olds that we're looking at this program for. So it could change the trajectory of children and families for generations. So I'm really excited to hear more about this project. So I will turn things over to Mr. David Rust, who is the Executive Director of Say Yes. Mr. Rust?
Thank you, Superintendent Williams. We're really happy to be here this evening. I'll be brief at the top. We've been working closely with the district team to launch something that we think is innovative and responds to the needs of families that's been much asked for a long time, as long as we've been working in close partnership with the Buffalo Public Schools. And that's a small number of 3-year-old classrooms built into the community schools model. The thought being that this would be really early access to services and supports, that eventually students would move directly into the district's UPK and kindergarten programs, robustly growing our schools and getting students ingrained in the Buffalo Public Schools and ready to learn, as Mr. Scott touched on, as early as possible. Again, this would be built into the community school model, which is a really wonderful and innovative model we've had with the district for a long time. This would be small and as a pilot. We never envision it being massive, given that there's really good work happening in the community, but we view this as complementing and filling gaps for good work in community. Again, we would staff this with Say Yes team members, but working in close partnership and under the direction of principals in the building, as we do with all our other programs that we put in place. So it's innovative, it's new, it's exciting, and it's something that we really look forward to piloting in the coming school year. So with that, I'm going to turn it to our colleagues with the Buffalo Public Schools and Jelena from our team that we've been working closely with. So certainly everybody here knows Ashley and Lindsay and Jelena. So I will turn it to our colleagues to take it from here.
Thanks so much, David. Can I just ask, is the presentation currently being presented? Thank you, Admir. So we are going to walk through a few slides with you today that will present the exploratory pilot for 3-year-old pre-K program. And if you could just flip to the next slide. Listed, you will see our core group of planners, which is inclusive of BPS and Say Yes Buffalo personnel who will work in collaboration with one another throughout this entire process. Next slide, please. A general overview for the 3-year-olds pilot program is that we intend to launch up to 7 classrooms within existing Buffalo Public School community schools across each sub-district of the city. We plan to offer full-day programming for 3-year-olds in each of these chosen sites. This will be a curricular-based program that is developmentally appropriate, play-based, is inclusive of learning centers, and has an environment that is focused on the developmental needs and milestones for 3-year-olds. These classrooms will be managed and staffed by Say Yes Buffalo under the leadership of building administrators in collaboration with the Department of Elementary Education. Next slide, please.
Good evening, everyone. So this slide reflects the emphasis of On My Way to Pre-K, which is particular for the students who will enroll in this program. For families, a small portion of families in our community is a choice of an alternative pathway into K-12 education through this partnership. As little scholars enroll into this 3-wide pre-K space, we'll be growing their individual data portfolio that will help us inform practices, coordinate supports, and enhance experiences that they will have beyond pre-K. A unique component of this partnership that was highlighted earlier was the ability for families to have their children automatically matriculate into the UPK classroom in that particular school. Next slide.
In this slide, we'll address some of our strategies. So as a district in partnership with Say Yes Buffalo, we want to create and sustain an environment that nurtures a sense of belonging for our young 3-year-old children in the community. We want to strengthen our alignment with early childhood interventions, supports, and stakeholders in our community. We'd like to enhance families' understanding of developmentally appropriate milestones. We want to engage children in purposeful learning through play that fosters opportunity for critical thinking, risk-taking, and opportunities for growth in both social, emotional, and academic avenues. And lastly, we want to hold staff accountable to high-quality, authentic, inclusive practices using a strength-based supervision coaching model. Next slide, please.
We believe that the impact that this programming opportunity will have for our community is immense. Through this programming, students will enjoy learning as they gain confidence through early exposure. They will be on track to thrive when they enter pre-K and beyond. We believe that parents and caregivers will feel empowered to support their children as they are connected to the school community at an early stage, and that they will be equipped to support learning at home right from the start. We believe that teachers and staff will feel supported as they are engaged through thoughtful interactions with students and families as they build upon processes that encourage systems of cultural consciousness along with caring coordinated supports. Next slide, please.
We developed a logic model that will help inform a lot of the outcomes that we hope to achieve through this program and the partnership, emphasizing short-term and long-term goals. In our short-term goals, we want to make sure that children are meeting the developmental milestones for the early learning outcomes framework known as ELAW. That's included scientific reasoning, perceptual, motor, and physical development. Through the interactive RAP supports that we already have embedded in Say Yes Buffalo, that will also include students having access to health homes, mental health supports, as well as the other RAP supports that families are able to access through the partnerships and the resources that are available through the community school strategy. In terms of long-term outcomes, we hope that we are able to better support parents as they identify ways to support learning at home and strengthen stronger attendance rates as children move into their UPK and pre-K classrooms. Next slide. We have conducted research and assessed practices among other exemplary early childhood learning programs to determine the necessary outputs to measure and align our program with national and district standards for early learning outcomes. Our QI process includes utilizing a combination of classroom teacher data and scholar data. Internal program audits will be conducted annually. Our goal is to have a continuous stream of process and outcome data that flows around Say Yes Buffalo's internal RAP support programs and across Buffalo Public Schools programs so that we can have better decision-making and processes to ensure we have a quality program. This comprehensive QI process will enable us to identify quality improvement priorities ongoing that will be able to also influence changes to the logic model for better results. Next slide.
So to start this pilot program, the district and Say Yes Buffalo will utilize Erie County child care subsidies along with BPS ESSER's issued money in conjunction with money provided by the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation.
The long-term plan for sustainability is the expanded daycare subsidy allocations and scholarships through Erie County, along with potential additional UPK grants, which can consist of universal 3Y and or UPK expansion dollars. If these grant opportunities are released by the state, it is the district's intent to apply for these funds. If awarded, it would be a competitive RFPQ process that any qualifying agency in the city limits could also apply for. Lastly, blended braided title funding, which would be 2 or more of any of the above mentioned or other funding streams, which would be coordinated in a way that would support the 3Y initiative programming within the district.
I believe, at this moment, I believe Mr. Crestis would like to make a comment. Will?
Yeah,
Thank you for moving the slide, Amir. I want to thank the entire team. It's been a collaborative effort between Say Yes Buffalo and our district staff. And this has been a long time coming, and we're just very excited that we're now in this consideration for a launch. But I wanted to apprise the board of what the next steps are, so you have a sense of the timeline. In next week's board meeting, there will be an item for your consideration that will allow us to begin making purchases for the setup of our classrooms. The team will then consider, throughout the summer, we'll be considering several sites based on principal feedback that we've received, principal interest, and then of course that real key element to make sure that the classes in this pilot are launched strategically around the entire city, that at least one of our 7 classrooms would be in every board district. So we have 6 board sub-districts, and we intend to put at least one classroom in each one of those, and then with a class to spare. This fall, there will be another board item for consideration that would position Say Yes for the launching of staff. And then we would be ready to launch at least 2 classes to start by January 2023, with up to 7 classes in this pilot by 2024. Next slide, please. It's just a Q&A slide at that point anyway, so if there are any questions from the group, the team is ready to answer.
All right. Thank you, BPS staff and Say Yes Buffalo staff for that presentation. I will go in reverse alphabetical order. So Paulette Woods, Board Member Woods, you have the floor.
I'd just like to know what's the amount of the ESSER funds that you have planned over the 3 years for this project, since it's mentioned as a major one of the first short-term funds supports. Dr. Cressy?
Okay, thank you. The board item that is coming up next week will be for up to $450,000 in ESSER funds that will go specifically towards classroom infrastructure, furniture, equipment for classrooms, and curricular materials for teachers and students. The board item in the fall will be up to $950 in ESSER funds that will be dedicated towards all of the potential staffing and further needs that will be, will be made aware of to launch the classes. And then the following year, another board item for up to $950.
Okay, well, I would think this project would fall under one of the ESSER prerogatives of extended learning, so it sounds like an exciting project.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. Next, we have President Petrucci.
Thank you, Co-Chair Scott. I'm just very excited that this program is going to be launched. I think it's going to provide tremendous service to the families of the city of Buffalo, and I think we will all see great results because of it. So thank you. I'm just very happy to see it.
Thank you, President Petrucci. Board Member Makosi.
Chair Scott, without being repetitive, knowing that I would have really feel like my kids would have benefited from a program like this. I'm just excited to know that our students, especially with everything going on, are going to have these supports. I really appreciate how we were diligent about the pilot programs going into, in the entire city and not just certain pockets of the city. Then, we can get the data to really see what's happening across the board instead of just assuming. So I really appreciate the approach. And yeah, my question was around financial. So thank you, Board Member Woods, for asking that. I'm in full support and I'm excited to see it happen.
Thank you, Ms. McCosey. Board Member Jay.
Larry, Mr. Scott, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. J. Next we have Board Member Hurd in City Hall.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Scott. First, I'd like to say this is a wonderful program, and I'm glad that the district, Will Caresi, and Say Yes, Mr. David Russ, took the time to help develop this program and initiate and launch this program. So a couple of questions would be, this is a launch date. This will be this coming school year, 2022-23 school year?
By January 2023. So yes, in this upcoming school year.
Okay, by January 2023. I do love that you specifically talked about parent involvement, because that's very important as our children grow, and making sure that they're all on the same page in the development of their child mentally, their educational, and also for them to just the cognitive development. Are there going to be working with other mental agencies due to maybe issues that the child may be going through in the home, or issues in the community and environment that's going to be attached to this program?
Jelena, you want to take that?
Yes, thank you. I could take that. Board Member Hurd, as you're aware, we already have mental health supports that are across all of the schools, but we have had preliminary conversations with a provider in the community who will not only be able to provide supports for students who have expressed some challenges, or parents who've expressed challenges regarding some mental health concerns. One of the aspects that we intend to roll out in the program is having every student complete a PEARLS assessment, which is the pediatric version of ACEs, so that we can identify what those strengths are for parents so they can stand up their student supports, but also identify where there's areas where our family and community partner coordinator can help intervene and identify early intervention.
Okay, great. It sounds like a wonderful program. And will there be special training for the teachers for this program, or will it be?
I can speak to that as well.
Yes.
Yes, and we plan to also work alongside the elementary department to identify other opportunities for training for the teachers, but we've also identified some of our college partners who committed to doing some in-service training and trainings while teachers are on break.
Okay. And my last question will probably be for the district. Will the district board members have any say-so about which schools these will be allocated to, or?
Yeah, no, I'd say probably not. Although, we'll certainly keep the board informed. It's going to be a combination of making sure the district's broader needs can be, met, and that there is space in a particular school. What we want to make sure is that every board district has at least one of the classrooms, and we can certainly keep you informed about which schools that's going to be. It also depends a little bit on principal interest and their interest in being a part of this pilot. So we'll be looking for all of those things and measuring all those factors, but the classrooms will be put in each of the board districts.
Okay. And my last question, how will parents decide, be able to apply, for the child, this program?
Jelena, do you want to talk about recruitment?
And so we have a recruitment strategy that we've already begun to develop, but also want community feedback as to how we roll that out so that we can target families who we know this would be the preferred choice for them. So it'll initiate with the interest inquiry as they express interest into enrolling, and then identifying what would be the appropriate location and placement for their child once classrooms are identified.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Smallwood. Thank you, Dr. Russ, Mr. Scott, for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Board member and Vice President Evans Brown, Dr. Evans Brown.
Thank you, Board Member Scott, co-chair. I really like the program because I think now we see children age 3, and I always look at them and say, you need to be in school. I think that my colleagues answered or question some of the questions I had, particularly when it relates to recruitment. My question is a couple. How long is this program? Is it half day, full day? And I don't think we need to be so narrow in terms of getting families familiar with this concept. So when you talk about recruitment, perhaps opening it up, to the market, because there is a market, and I don't think we need to sort of be selected. I think every family should have an opportunity to opt in this type of program. That's my 2 cents. So is it a half day, full day, and or could the recruitment be more broader?
So it is a full day program, Dr. Brown, that will also include summer opportunity for those littles who enroll. And in terms of recruitment, we can absolutely broaden it. We recognize that there are providers in our community who are already doing a phenomenal job. So one of the thoughts we had was targeting some families who already have children in the schools that will have a classroom that would be eligible for enrollment, and then opening those opportunities up, of course, to the broader community.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Evans-Brown. And next, Board Member Belton Cotman.
I just want to thank Say Yes for the efforts that they've put in place to make this happen. My question really is for our staff, because typically in the month of September, we have a shortage of spots for our kindergartners. And I'm wondering, where are we finding these extra rooms, these extra spots? Are you saying they have not been identified? But it's been my understanding for the last 3 years that we have had 5-year-olds on hold waiting for placements as late as early September. So I'm just curious to know where are the extra rooms coming from?
Let me give that question to Lindsay or Ashley.
Sure. So, Mrs. Belton, the rooms have not yet been identified. The principals will be surveyed to see who has space. I cannot speak to a capacity situation at the kindergarten level, but I do know at the pre-K level over the last 3 to 5 years, we have not met capacity at the pre-K level. So I'm not sure how we're meeting capacity at the kindergarten level. Again, I can't speak to that because I don't oversee the enrollment numbers for for kindergarten, but we can certainly get that answered to you.
Yes, please get the answer, because this question is not my first time asking it. Okay, so I asked it before. Where were we going to find the spots for these classrooms? And that's been almost a year. I remember right. It's been over a year that question was asked, because I think we started, Say Yes expanded their application to include the 3-year-olds. And I asked that question at that point. So I'm concerned about making sure that there's a place. Ideally, personally, I would like to see this program housed in its own location. I would like to see it have its own autonomy. And I would like to see how it can grow as a feeder into our schools, because I really feel that if Say Yes, based on their previous performances, if given that opportunity, that they will blow it out of the box. And I really would like for us to really consider about finding a place to groom this program so that these children can all be together. And let's see how that could work. I really would like to see that. I want to thank you guys again for bringing excellence to our district. Thank you. Say Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Belton-Common. I just have a few additional questions. One of my questions was in regards to building space, similar to what Board Member Belton-Common mentioned. We hear over and over that our buildings are at capacity, but it seems as if that still needs to be more thoroughly studied and determined. My other questions are in regards to class size and staff to student ratio, and then also transportation, whether transportation will be provided.
That I can. Jelena, could you maybe start the answer to that, and then Lindsay or Ashley can chime in?
Yes, absolutely. So our classroom sizes will be small, 14 littles with 2 teachers, so a 1-to-7 teacher ratio, which is OCS regs. And we will not be providing transportation. We are in the pilot stage. It's something that we will consider, but we want to make sure we can launch successfully and then take into account feedback from the community as we grow.
And when you say 2 teachers, are those 2 gen ed teachers, or would it be a gen ed special ed teacher?
Depending on the needs of the students that we identified through the recruitment and enrollment process, that will help us inform what teachers we actually hire. But our goal is to have 1 master level certified teacher in the classroom who specializes in birth through 6, and then a teacher assistant who is either in lieu of their certification or at least CDA trained, who has an interest in pursuing their teacher certification. So that's the intent for our hiring pool. But again, we want to keep it open and flexible so that we can hire quality staff, as Say Yes is known for.
And I think my last question, just any other barriers other than space that you are anticipating to launch the program and then sustain it after it begins? Barriers, challenges, obstacles that you might have to work through?
Not that I can think off the top of my head, other than what typical barriers are for, identifying students for enrollment. There is processes that we have to adhere to because it is a daycare under OCFS regs. I don't foresee that as a barrier, though. That's just the process. But as things and events happen in our community, we just have to keep a pulse on it so that we ensure that we continue to provide a safe learning environment for the students and the families.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Smallwood. Thank you, everybody from BPS and from Say Yes Buffalo for the presentation. And we look forward to this transpiring and the continued partnership in making it happen. And it sounds like January 2023 is when we will get 2 classrooms launched. And then the following school year, I think I heard 7 total, 1 in each board member sub-district. Dr. Williams, Superintendent Williams, any last remarks or questions?
Mr. Scott, Mr.
Yes.
Kuzma raised his hand. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the transportation component. Because we provide transportation to our 3-year-old pre-K kids at Bennett Park Montessori presently, we likely have the obligation, if students meet the criteria, to offer that as an option for those 3-year-olds that would attend this program. So I just wanted to clarify, that for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzma. Superintendent Williams, any last thoughts, questions that you might have?
I want to say that you can see that there's an incredible amount of thought that has been put into developing this piloted model. And I think we're going to see some really good outcomes if the board approves the model. I think that the questions that were asked tonight were very thoughtful and gave us a little more insight. I could see Ms. Smallwood, she was really thinking hard about, answering those questions. But I think it gave us a lot of insight, into this program. So I just think it's going to benefit so many of our children. And so we're talking about 7 classrooms, 14 students in each classroom. And so that is close to 100 littles, as Ms. Smallwood called our 3-year-olds. So I'm excited. We'll be working very closely with Say Yes, in the future, if the board approves it, to make sure that, this program is modeled the right way, and hopefully it will just continue to grow. You're muted, Chairman Scott.
That concludes our educational support work session. Thank you again, everybody. And I will turn it over to Dr. Williams and Mr. Kuzma in regards to a special meeting request.
Thank you both, Mr. Rust and Ms. Smallwood. Thank you. Great
Thank you, Dr.
presentation. And thank you, Dr. Carestis, for all that you've done also to move this forward. So at this time, Dr. Rivera is excused tonight, and we do have another section to address in educational support that is going to be focusing on our PECTA contract. And so I'm going to turn things over to our Chief Counsel, Mr. Kuzma.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I'll be brief, but we do have a piece of good news. Several weeks back, we were able to settle a contract. We reached a tentative agreement with our Professional Clerical Technical Employees Association, otherwise known as PECTA, which is a membership of about 450, 475 individual employees of the district that this unit covers. PECTA has already voted on the agreement, and I think it was nearly unanimous in their support of this agreement. And so the next step is for the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority to review and opine on the agreement. And regardless of whether we have to wait for that to happen or not, in deference to them, they have indicated that they will be reviewing and opining on this agreement on June 22nd. And therefore, I won't be able to, or I would recommend that we not have this before the board next week at your regular business meeting. However, I do not want to wait until your next regular meeting, which is the third Wednesday in July, because a lot of the terms kick in as of July 1. And so I'd respectfully request that we consider what I would think would be a relatively short meeting, special meeting for this matter to be considered and reviewed and voted upon by, and certainly with any questions that you would like to ask, sometime between June 22nd and July 1. I can get that agreement out to you for your review and any questions ahead of time that you may have as early as tomorrow. And I would expect this to take about a half an hour. I don't know what folks' schedule is like. I know it's rather busy with graduations and the end of school coming up, but I'd propose we look perhaps at the Wednesday after next, the 22nd of June, maybe at 4 o'clock for about a half an hour. And unfortunately, I think the virtual meeting allowance ended and expired today, so this would have to be an in-person meeting.
It sounds good to me, Nate.
That works for me too.
Works for me.
You're good, Ms. Spelden-Cottman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thumbs up from Dr. Evans Brown. Hope, Jen McCosey.
Was it the 22nd, did you say, Nate?
I did, yeah. The 22nd at perhaps 4 o'clock, we could do something earlier so you could have the rest of your evening.
I can do it.
Okay, Dr. Carestis, I wouldn't expect a lot of a large participation from the public at this meeting. It would be a one-item meeting. Do you think 801 is a possibility?
Right, I would recommend 801. It'll be low turnout from the public, and there really wouldn't be any staff here besides the superintendent and a few cabinet members perhaps. So I would recommend 801. We have it well ventilated. So, for the board's consideration, 801, I think would be a good spot.
Mr. Kuzma, I won't be available on the 22nd, but I probably could be on if it's on Zoom for possibly about a half an hour.
She couldn't vote, Chance.
Yeah, you could participate, you could listen, but you couldn't vote.
Okay.
I think we would have a quorum based on the feedback that we got. And I know how difficult everyone's schedules would be. So are we good with the 22nd at 4, room 801? And Dr. Karestas, you can assist in getting, I'll work with you to get the proper notice and posting up for that meeting.
Right.
As long as we get the material in advance so we can go through it.
Yeah, like I said, Ms. Woods, I will get that to you by the end of this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all that I needed, and I appreciate your courtesy and consideration, board members, for working with me to get this contract voted upon. And certainly, I know that the 450 or so members of the PECTA union will be appreciative as well. So they know heading into the new fiscal year that their new contract has been considered by the board.
All right. I will then turn it over to Vice President of Student Achievement, Dr. Kathy Evans-Brown, for our Student Achievement work session.
Thank you, Board Member Larry Scott. You were so thorough and short. So I'm going to.
Early again, too.
I know. So thank you. Okay, so this is the Student Achievement work session. We have a robust conversation about human trafficking and special education. So with that, I'm going to keep it short, and I'm going to pass the torch to Dr. Tonya Williams to introduce your staff.
Okay, thank you so much, Chairwoman Dr. Evans-Brown. We have some guests that are with us tonight from the Western District of New York Human Trafficking Task Force. And, it does my heart well to hear that there is such a task force in Western New York, because we all know that human trafficking, it is a horrific crime, and unfortunately, it's on the rise. And it really entails exploiting a person in one or three ways: for labor, for services, and/or for sexual reasons. And so to hear that there is a task force right here in Western New York that is working to address this really serious issue is really, it does my heart well. And we have with us Miss Mary Moran, who is the coordinator of this task force. And I believe she's brought some folks here with her, including someone from the Erie County Sheriff's Office, that are going to give us a robust presentation, and then we'll be able to engage in a discussion and answer questions regarding the information that they will be presenting. So Ms. Moran, thank you and your team for being here this evening. I know you've been working with Ms. Botticelli and have been anxious to come before the board and share information about some of the work you're involved in. I'll turn things over to you now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. Good evening. As you mentioned, my name is Mary Moran, and I am the coordinator for the Western District of New York Human Trafficking Task Force. Thank you to Anne for organizing this presentation. We are so grateful for the opportunity to be here, and we appreciate your time this evening. Tonight, we just wanted to share some information on what human trafficking looks like in our region and how our multidisciplinary team operates and responds to this crime. We are also happy to answer any of your questions, and we can do that at the end of our presentation. So I just wanted to take a few moments just to introduce to you our task force to you all. Our task force was initiated in 2006, so we've been around for a while. We are funded by the Department of Justice. Our task force serves the 17 counties in the western parts of upstate New York. So our partners include federal and local law enforcement agencies, immigration attorneys, and social service providers who work in collaboration to provide comprehensive services, but also response to the crime of human trafficking using a victim-centered and trauma-informed approach. This multidisciplinary task force model is encouraged by the U.S. Department of Justice and is also considered a best practice in response to human trafficking. So some of our task force efforts include identifying survivors and those at risk of being exploited. And once they are identified, as I mentioned, we want to make sure that we deliver comprehensive services by prioritizing victims' choices. We also identify offenders through reactive and proactive investigations with our law enforcement partners, as well as prosecutions with our partners in the Erie County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. We also train local law enforcement, victim service personnel, and key stakeholders. So we do that here locally in the Western District, but also we do that nationally. We raise awareness of human trafficking, and we talk about the response that we have as a task force within our community. So I should note that all of our partner agencies have committed to understanding the effects of trauma on individuals, as well as ensure that survivor needs and choice are central in these very sensitive cases that take a long time. So we are very fortunate here in Western New York to have the expertise and experience of these agencies in their partnership on our task force. We have 2 local agencies that are actually receiving funding under the Department of Justice grant. That would be the Erie County Sheriff's Office, as well as the International Institute of Buffalo. They work in conjunction with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We have Aaliyah Howard, who is the Youth Trafficking Coordinator from the International Institute of Buffalo. You'll hear from her this evening, as well as Detective Dave Samorek, who is the Co-Program Director from the Erie County Sheriff's Office. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Aaliyah Howard. I'm hoping she is on the call.
Aaliyah said she's having a little trouble with her link.
Okay.
So maybe we could move on to the other part of the presentation. I'm going to have Admir reach out to her.
So I'm sorry, Anne, did you want Dave to start then?
I think that would be probably make a little sense right now, and I'll see if Admir can contact Aaliyah.
Okay.
I will jump in here, folks. Good evening. My name is Detective Dave Zamorek. I'm with the Erie County Sheriff's Office. As Mary stated, I am one of the co-program directors for the Human Trafficking Task Force with the Erie County Sheriff's Office. My better half, Detective Teresa Neitzel, was unable to make it tonight. She was pulled off to some other duties, so I am filling in for her. A little bit about the Sheriff's Office. As Mary stated, we have been in existence as a task force since 2006. The Sheriff's Office was, kind of took a lead at this point 15, 16 years ago in recognizing human trafficking as an issue in this area, and we've been federally funded since then. I have been part of the task force now since 2018. As a task force officer for Homeland Security investigations, as well as a detective with the Sheriff's Office. I am a full-time detective dedicated to human trafficking investigations. I'm actually, as well as my partner, we are co-located with Homeland Security Investigations in their offices downtown and embedded with their human trafficking and human smuggling group. So we have, as part of our the Western District Task Force, we also have a Erie County locally based task force that is sponsored by DA Flynn, the Erie County Human Trafficking Task Force. Myself, my partner Teresa Venitzel are two full-time detectives dedicated from the Sheriff's Office to that task force as well. Additionally, we have resources on a part-time basis from the town of Tonawanda. We have a detective and a lieutenant detective assigned to the task force, as well as a detective from the town of Lancaster. And all of us work hand in hand, with Homeland Security Investigations and with their human trafficking and human smuggling group. And I might add that HSI does have 4 special agents that are dedicated to human trafficking and human smuggling cases in this area. In addition to the law enforcement responsibilities, we do work with the task force. We were one of the Sheriff's Office is one of the founding partners for the Western District Task Force. We worked hand in hand with the International Institute, and I know Aaliyah will hopefully be on here shortly, and she can talk to you more about the services and everything that the Institute does. And they do absolutely amazing things with the survivors of trafficking. And many times, I think that's one of the things that kind of makes our task force unique. Many parts that you go, other parts of the country, you talk to other areas. Most of the time, law enforcement and social workers are kind of like oil and water. They don't work well together. But through this task force, we are kind of put up as an example nationally for how task forces are supposed to work and how those collaborative efforts are supposed to work when helping survivors, not just identifying them, but also helping them to get out of those situations and really start to turn the page in their lives. A few other things that we do specifically with training. I know Mary had mentioned that as well. I myself handle a lot of the training for local law enforcement, specifically within Erie County. I teach at the academy on the basic recruit level, as well as the supervisory level. I have been in Niagara County's academy to the same extent, teaching their new supervisors and their new recruits as well. And additionally, we've been just within the last 6 to 9 months have been able to reach out to some of the other law enforcement academies that fall within the Western District of New York. So our task force covers the 17 Western counties of New York State. So, we have, responsibility from, Lake Erie, all the way eastward towards just the side of Syracuse, and from Lake Ontario down to the Pennsylvania border. It's a very, very large geographic area. It's a very rural area as well. Within that area, there are approximately 9 different local academies, and we've, through some of the statistical analysis that we've done with the case tips that we've received, we've been able to identify that we're very good at getting tips from law enforcement in our area here, but not so much from some of those other outerlying areas. So we've been able to start approaching those academies, and I've been working with developing and teaching training on human trafficking within those areas as well. Within the Sheriff's Office now, we are newly funded again for the next 3 years within the task force. And we do have some programmatic ideas that we are working towards within the Sheriff's Office for under this next grant. 2 of our primary programs that we're looking to develop. One, we're calling the Path to Survivor program, which will be something that we're going to work to implement within the Erie County Holding Center. working with our medical department there. And, the goal there is to come up with develop a screening tool for incarcerated persons that when they do come into the facility as part of the screening process, they will be screened for potential human traffic signs and indicators of human trafficking, which is really a novel concept. It's not something that's being done in really very many places at all within the United States. The other program, well, one of several programs, but I think one that you folks will be most interested in is, we are working on a SRO program or working within our current SRO program to develop a program around human trafficking to bring that within our school districts. And our task force was selected as a pilot program site for a program that the International Association of Chiefs of Police is developing called Traffic Stop. And that program is designed to implement a curriculum, kind of like an after-school type club curriculum that will introduce the students to human trafficking, the warning signs of human trafficking, and to begin that conversation about the warning signs and the indicators of trafficking on the high school level. I kind of and to dovetail in with that, one of the other ideas and points that we'll be working on within our schools that our SROs are in, we want to also develop a program to assist in identifying potential victims within the school districts. And to kind of clarify on that, one of the things that we started thinking about when we came up with this idea, a lot of times, the social services will screen kids, that they come into contact with, whether it's through the social services system or child protection. They are screened by those entities for signs and risk factors of human trafficking. But at that point, it's really down the road, right? Once they start encountering the social services system, they're really far into their possible situation. So our idea was to kind of get to them before it becomes that serious of a situation. And the idea is to, working with our SROs, begin to implement maybe some training within the schools, within the counselors, the teachers that work with the students day in and day out, train them on the basics of human trafficking, to kind of give them an idea for what are some of the risk factors, right? And then within that, right, understanding that they're going to identify, right, when you start to train individuals on human trafficking and what human trafficking is, you're going to generate tips, you're going to generate potential victims. And so when you do that, you want to be able to know what to do with that information. So part of that, the idea for this program is also to then work with the International Institute and our program partners there to develop a multidisciplinary approach to working with those individuals through the school to help them, overcome, right, and hopefully, ideally, avoid becoming a victim of human trafficking, right, by identifying those risk factors, before they actually do become a victim. So those are some high pie in the sky goals that we have, that we're going to be working towards over the next 3 years, at least, as far as our signature keynote objectives under the sheriff's office and under our current grant. Got a handful of other law enforcement specific programmatic ideas that we're working on as well, but I think those two there are probably the highlights.
Thanks,
Did I
Dave.
miss anything, Mary?
No, I was just going to say, before Aaliyah starts her presentation, can you just clarify that the Erie County Sheriff's Office has an SRO program of its own within your own agency? So, because I believe it's my understanding that Buffalo Public Schools have their own SRO group.
Right. So within the sheriff's office presently, we have 3 school resource officers, and they're contracted through 3 school districts within the jurisdictions of the sheriff's office. So, for example, we have a school resource officer within the Alden School District. We have another school resource officer within the Holland School District, and we also have a school resource officer within the Springville Griffith School District. And the Springville School District, Springville Griffith, is where we are going to pilot this traffic stop program through the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and that's where we're going to start with that program there.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Aaliyah, are you on?
And hopefully the call-in number is functional. I'm so sorry you have to look at a blue box instead of my face. I promise I am friendly and smiling and excited to be here with everyone this evening. So forgive my tardiness as I am unable to navigate my agency security settings. But again, thank you for creating the space for us to talk with you all tonight. So my name is Aaliyah Howard. I coordinate the Trafficked Youth Services here at the International Institute of Buffalo, which means that I'm the point of contact for Erie County's Safe Harbor Trafficked Youth Program, where we provide services for youth who have been identified as being at risk for trafficking or youth who have in fact been trafficked. And with a new project, we will also be expanding services across Western New York to better identify youth who have been labor trafficked. Because while we know, and we've known for many years, that youth are being sex trafficked and are at risk for sex trafficking in our communities, that they're also experiencing labor trafficking. And so we're working really hard with community partners, as David mentioned, to really close up those gaps for youth that are being forced into exploited labor in restaurants and in farms and in other types of criminal enterprises throughout our community, to really make sure that we're offering supports to wrap those youth up with other kind of supportive measures to make sure that they're not falling through the gaps or being criminalized or seen as bad kids, quite frankly. So to get us started, I really just want to make sure that we're coming from a shared understanding of what we mean when we're talking about human trafficking, right? So in the United States, trafficking was defined in 2000 underneath the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, which defines both sex trafficking and labor trafficking. I'm happy to share a PowerPoint or some other kind of images with folks. And again, my apologies for my tech troubles this evening. But really, when we're talking about trafficking of youth, we're talking about folks that are under 18 involved in some type of commercial sex, or we're talking about youth who are being exploited through labor, right? So there's some active trafficker who has gained control over the young people or adults that we're worried about. They're forcing them to engage in some type of labor, whether that be restaurant work, whether that be farm labor, whether that be manufacturing, domestic work, nannying work, things like that, or whether it be some type of criminal enterprise. And then the trafficker is the one that's gaining the benefit from that situation. And they're keeping people in that situation. They're keeping victims in that situation through force, fraud, and coercion. And so when we're talking about trafficking here in Western New York, we know that we worked with almost 150 newly identified young people just from Erie County, the vast majority in the city of Buffalo in last year alone, right? Most of those young people were young cisgender females, about 90%, about 10% were male, right? And so we know that we're seeing young people of all genders, of all ages. We've worked with youth in the past year as young as 11, well into their adulthood as well. And we know that youth are being, again, as I mentioned, exploited through labor trafficking as well as sex trafficking. About 30% of the youth that we worked with last year were experiencing labor trafficking. And again, those common industries looked like agriculture, restaurant, domestic servitude, so doing all of the household labor in the family and the household, a lot of nannying positions, a lot of forced prostitution or dancing, and then again, that criminal activity, right? Youth that are being forced either through gang involvement or not into carrying or transporting substances, illicit substances, money for those, or carrying weapons, including in the city of Buffalo. When we're talking about vulnerabilities specifically to trafficking, there are some factors that are impacting our community members differently that make them more vulnerable to being taken advantage of through trafficking. So we know that youth specifically who don't have stable housing, as many of the youth in our communities are facing, especially during COVID, including couch surfing. If kids don't have a safe place to stay, we know that they're going to stay somewhere, right? We're living in Buffalo, right? We can't have a large street homeless population because we don't have a climate that would support that. So we know that young people are going to stay somewhere. And what we're finding is many of them are staying in places that have those strings attached, right? Where they're being groomed either online or in person, offering those basic needs in order to then have a safe place to stay, and then they're being taken advantage of. We know that young folks that are identifying as part of the LGBTQ communities are certainly at a greater level of risk for being trafficked. That's a vulnerability. We know that youth are being kicked out of homes and receiving bullying in community and bullying in schools. And so we know, again, those LGBTQ youth are at higher level of risk, as are youth that have, uncertain immigration status, any type of disability, substance use being a big factor, especially for many of the older teens that we're connected with, and then that trauma history. And I think that one thing is really important as I often speak with youth providers, teachers, school counselors, is that really a teenager's age is a primary vulnerability for them to be taken advantage of through trafficking, right? If we think about teens' brains and how impulsive our teen family members and community members are, that way that teen brains go right to black and white, the ways that kind of emotions are so much more exciting as teenagers, all of those things are factored in to ways that make kids and teens much more vulnerable to being trafficked or being taken advantage of. And so we also know that we're working with a lot of kids and a lot of teens that are missing time, they're running away, they're experiencing AWOL, they're kind of missing either short, frequent pieces of time, or they're missing for days or weeks, right? We're seeing that in the news more and more as our community starts to respond to missing youth in different ways with our partners in Buffalo Police Department and across the community, right? We're raising awareness earlier of kids that are going missing, but we know that those missing and unaccounted for youth are specifically vulnerable to being trafficked as well. So I really wanted to focus a few minutes of the time that I have with you is to talk through some of the reasons why it makes sense to identify trafficking as soon as we can, right? Why would we talk to kids that have an extensive trauma history about one more hard thing when our teachers and our communities and our community partners, frankly, are so pulled so tight right now to be able to help meet basic needs of students and community members? And I think part of that is because, quite frankly, if we can name an exploitation experience as trafficking, there are tangible benefits and tangible services available, both in pulling experts like Mary and the task force and Dave if we need to pull in law enforcement for safety planning and accountability, but also to make sure that crime victims' rights are supported, right? New York State is building plans to be able to support trafficked youth better and trafficked youth adults better as well. And it gives us more options for being able to validate these crime victims' experiences. We get a lot of our referrals through child welfare systems, child protection, youth probation, right? When youth have already faced criminalization. We get a lot of referrals from East Ferry Detention, but frankly, we want to get those referrals well before a young person has charges or are involved in those juvenile justice systems. We are getting a handful of referrals, especially now that schools have opened up to be more in person, from school counselors and psychologists. We know that we are connected with youth who find their vice principal or their principals to be some of the safest people in their lives and are making disclosures and kind of being pulled in those directions. And we certainly know that, Buffalo Public Schools is the largest district in our community, at least for myself, where I'm living and working. it's certainly a partner that we want to work more closely with. So I will note that all services, when we're talking about anti-trafficking services for youth and adults, are all free, they're all voluntary, and they're all confidential, right? And so this isn't something that we have to worry about waiting for a young person or a family to have health insurance or legal documented status in the United States. These are all services that are available, and there's no wrong question, right? One of the things that we want to make sure that we're clear about offering is that we have, we call it technical assistance or training, right? So that just means that, if somebody is worried about trafficking in school, if we're worried about a young person that's missing time, or they tripped and fell in the hallway and 3 cell phones fell out of their backpack and we don't know where they came from, that that you've got resources to call locally or the National Trafficking Hotline to be able to say, I'm not sure, I heard about trafficking, I'm not sure, but I'm worried and here's what I'm seeing, to be able to get those local trained resources into the community. So why don't, Mary and Dave, why don't I pause there? Because again, I know I was late and I don't want to overspeak. And of course, happy to take questions.
Sure, Ann, we're happy to answer any questions. I know we kind of just gave you guys a lot of information, but we're here to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I will start the questions from the board, beginning with, I saw Sharon Delton-Cotman's hand up. She's a board person. Sharon, comments, questions?
Thank you for your information. Very interested in human trafficking. And just curious to know why, did I hear you say that there's a large concentration in the city of Buffalo for trafficking? Did I hear you say that? Did Dave say something like that, that there's a large number of students, people that are trafficked out of Buffalo? No?
I heard Ms. Howard allude to something like that.
Okay, someone did. So I'm just curious to know.
Yes, I believe Aaliyah did give a statistic.
I heard him say 150 children, 90% female in the city of Buffalo. That's my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so my question is how why was Springville picked versus Buffalo? Because we know that there's a major problem in Buffalo. And my other question is, are you working with people who are grassroots people like Kelly Galloway and Mona's House? And how diverse is your team? Those are my questions.
So I can start in terms of our community partners, and then I'll pass it to Dave to talk more about the SRO, the School Resource Officer training. So we do work with a lot of different grassroots organizations. I know that Mary and I did a CROB training with Mona's House a couple of years ago. It was before COVID, which feels very, very far away at this point. But doing a training around some of the, especially the kind of the civil legal, how do we help folks that have been trafficked and have a criminal record, for example. So we've done some co-trainings, and we certainly work with clients that are connected with both of our programs, as well as clients that are connected with, substance use providers, mental health providers, who are, doing some of the amazing kind of peer-led programs. I know SNUG is doing amazing work through ECMC and some of their work. We've got a lot of, especially teens that are connected with their program right now. So we do try very hard to partner with programs across the city, because each of us has our own area of expertise to be able to pull in the right folks, right? The folks that have the right supports to support, frankly, which aspects of a youthful person they need, quite frankly. We're always looking to continue to diversify our staff in terms of lived experience and in terms of communities that they're representing and communities that they're part of. It's certainly something that we've made great strides with in the past several years as we learn how to do better as we move forward. But Dave, let me pass to you in terms of the school selection process for the SRO program.
Sure, thank you, Leah. So as far as the selection of Springville Griffith as the school district, initially when identifying a school district, part of our process was utilizing the school resource officers within the Erie County Sheriff's Office. So, you know, our deputies and our personnel are deployed in other parts of the county, and you know, we don't have any deputies that are working in any of the Buffalo public schools. So we were somewhat limited in, you know, where we would be able to, you know, establish this program, right? So, you know, and part of our idea as well, as far as developing programmatic ideas for our current grant proposal, was taking a focus on Sheriff's Office operations, right? So things that the Erie County Sheriff's Office is already doing, and basically adding a lens of human trafficking to those things that we're already doing, right? And a lot of that, I think, has to do with a plan for sustainability, right? Because, I mean, yes, we've been fortunately to be funded by the federal government as long as we have, you know, through the Department of Justice, but there's never a guarantee that we're going to continue to be funded, you know, the task force, that is, you know, beyond our current grant period. So, you know, and within that, with that scope in mind, you know, we looked at the Sheriff's Office operations and what are some of the things that we're doing, and how can we add a human trafficking lens to those things, right? So that's why we identified the holding center, right? What can we do within the holding center? Yes, you know what? Let's take a look at the incarcerated persons that are coming into the holding center, and let's screen those persons for trafficking, right? Let's take our SROs and let's start to, you know, look at the schools again, in knowing, right, that, and it wasn't an arbitrary decision to select Springville the Springville School District. We've had you know, very recent reports of students that were, you know, associated with you know, cases, trafficking cases, you know, from that school district. So I think that's one of the reasons why we focus specifically on Springville out of the 3 school districts that we have school resource officers in. And then again, just as an example, as you know, looking at Sheriff's Office operations, you know, we're looking at doing some specific intelligence and reconnaissance, you know, regards to some labor trafficking cases, utilizing our aviation division and using the capabilities of Air One and our helicopter to do surveillance and intelligence gathering on farms that are in some of our rural areas. We're looking at using our commercial motor vehicle enforcement division to, again, like, they're out there all the time working with the New York State Department of Transportation. I know they work with a lot of all the law enforcement agencies in the area that do commercial motor vehicle enforcement, and they're constantly into semi-trucks, you know, doing inspections on those vehicles, but they never ask any questions about trafficking. And there's this massive nationwide organization called Truckers Against Trafficking that does all sorts of outreach to that specific industry. And so we wanted to maybe, hey, let's look at the resources that they have available, and let's start to incorporate that into, you know, our commercial motor vehicle division. So that was, you know, just some examples as to, you know, why we came to that decision and how we, you know, what the thought processes were there. I hope that answers your question.
Well, yeah, it answered my question. I'm sure there was a thought process associated with it, but from what I'm being told, within the inner city, that there's a major problem, and I just was surprised that we don't have a stronger presence, particularly since we know that there is we are sitting on the gateway within an 8-hour radius of so many high areas that are being, these young ladies are being, and young men are being trafficked too. So I wanted to ask that question. How diverse is your team? Do you have any people of color or African Americans on it?
Our anti-trafficking team for youth and adults, team Sheriff's Department. My apologies.
I'm looking at who would be reaching out to the children more so than anybody. What success looks like me is what I'm looking at.
Right, we do have staff of color, we have SIR staff, and we have survivors who are also on our youth staff teams, as well as our adult teams, because we know it's important for youth to see staff, frankly, that are reaching out that have similar experiences or can empathize or who look like them, very frankly.
Okay. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I appreciate the work that you're doing. I would strongly encourage you to, since you do not have a strong presence on the east side or in the city of Buffalo, that you do work more in close alliance with people like Mona, who has a mentoring program for young girls who has been trafficked, and there's not one out there yet for young men, but who's doing that type of work. Because if we're going to be serious about that problem, we know that we have a major problem inside the city of Buffalo that's not being adequately addressed, and I would appreciate more help with that. But I understand the work. I am very familiar with it. I just attended a seminar out of Dallas within the past couple of months that was sponsored between Dallas and Houston, that talked about the gang involvement, that also talked about the religious affiliations that are associated with it, how girls are being trafficked that way and things like that. And so nationally, there are a lot of organizations that want to work with this, and I just would look forward to seeing more done in Buffalo, New York area, since we do sit on this border, and within 8 hours we can be in Albany, Toronto, Montreal, Pennsylvania, which is a big one, Philadelphia. It's just a lot of areas. Albany, I'm understanding, is really a big hub for trafficking. I'm finding that out. That amazed me that the capital of the state would be listed as one of the hot spots in the state. So thank you for all you do. I know you guys are doing the best you can with what you have, but just trust me to know that we advocate for Buffalo Public Schools, and that's what we're here to do. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Cotman. Yeah, and I concur that, we have SROs in our schools as well. And I think it's important to continue to educate young people, educate adults, because I'm still learning about this whole phenomenon. So it's really critical. I have one question before I go on to Board Member Hurd. So, and this is probably for Aaliyah and anybody else who can answer from the task force. So from your experience, how well are these young people receptive of your services once you get wind that they are involved somewhere or the other with human trafficking?
That's a great question. And my disappointing answer is that every youth response, just like every youth trauma experience, is very different. I'm working directly with a young person right now who was ready to be out of the situation. They're ready to link up with help, and they're ready to move forward. And so I've been working with them for maybe 4 days. I think that I reached out to them on Friday, and we've already had multiple appointments, and we've gotten significant work done towards goals in just these past 4 days. And there are youth that we reach out to on a weekly basis for months at a time because they're not ready, or they don't believe that a system or an adult is going to be able to help. And so maybe sometimes it takes months. There are youth that we've worked with that wait to connect with us until their 18th birthday because they've had so many negative experiences in our child welfare systems that we know have a lot of work towards improvement as well, right? So every young person is very, very different. We'll often give youth an opportunity to connect with one case manager, and if it doesn't work, then we'll try to connect them with somebody else, or we'll loop in another program just to give them more choices. But really, it's unfortunately, it's a case-by-case basis, and I can't give you a better answer for that.
No, thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. Each child is different and receptive to, differences. Somebody may not be the right person they connect with, but they may connect with somebody else. So it's just the nature of the beast. Thank you for that. Board Member Terrence Hurd, you're up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kathy Evans Brown. This right here is very touching to me, and I served as a post-certified officer in the state of Georgia. One of my duties was I was in a sex offense task force, to where not only did I supervise sex offenders, felony sex offenders, but also did home visits and went to the homes and did raids onto homes and properties where children, adults were being sexually trafficked, sexually exploited, and led into prostitution. So I had many felony cases that I sat in court and testified about these victims. And the biggest thing that I seen that was needed was help for these victims. What are we doing? We know that we have victims, but the survivors of victims was most important to me. And what are we doing as a society, as groups, and also as organizations receiving funding through the county? What are we doing to help the survivors of these victims? And I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Howard and Mr. Zumrecht, Detective Zumrecht, for the work that you're doing. And I know that it's a very, very daunting task. It's hard, and you have sleepless nights when you're working with victims and working with people that's been physically and mentally and sexually abused, especially from young ages. And through supervision, going into homes, checking radiuses of playgrounds and schools which victims lived at, and going through computers, papers, and actually going to homes where they were full of children and children around the house, but just blatantly violated, their order, being in custody of the state. So there we work with the probation parole departments. We work with the sheriff department, judicial services, federal services, ATF, the state police, city police. And as we did these roundups, because as a probation parole officer, we get more jurisdiction than those other agencies about going into homes and going with, we don't need search warrants to go into a home to look at these offenders and see what they're doing. And these raids went in and early in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, late at night, and in majority of the times, we always see them in violation of their probation or parole. So with this, what effects is going on here in Erie County and dealing with these pedophiles, and a couple other questions before we get there. One thing that I hate was silent approval. When an officer making an arrest of a young person that's inside the store, they caught stealing, or they see someone on the street and they pick them up for loitering, but without ever using the services to find out why that child is stealing or why that youth is out on the street late at night. They look for the arrest. And I see that to be very common without, looking for services to find why is that child out in the streets in the middle of the night, or why is that child in the store, stealing, when it look like they don't need to steal, or it look like, they're going through some issues in life. So what services are being provided for these youth? First is my first question. And how are you counteracting, the strains that they've been under in their life, instead of just incarcerating them? The reason why I asked that, because I had 18-year-old girls, with three or more felony convictions, that I supervised. And it's painstaking, they're, of course, dropped out of school, stories about feeding their family, feeding their brothers and sisters, getting pregnant at a young age, not knowing who the father is. What services are being provided, that you have that's working with them? So that's my first question.
Well, I was going to say, like, first and foremost, we have trained law enforcement that when, they go out and arrest an individual or a youth, they're going to know, okay, they're going to have a broader picture of what's happening. So if an individual is stealing something, there's a reason behind that. So obviously we try and train as many law enforcement officers as we can on keep using these buzzwords, but to be trauma informed in when they're approaching somebody that is in the process of committing a crime. I mean, Dave can certainly speak to this, but it's really about recognizing vulnerabilities. And you really raise a great point in that you can see that it takes a group, it takes this multidisciplinary team to be able to first and foremost identify, individuals that might be vulnerable to trafficking, and then also being able to understand, appreciate that there's a broader need there, right? And so it really does, you really do have to have these service providers and the law enforcement agencies working together, and we all work together as a team so that when someone does come into the system, whether someone's referred through the National Human Traffic Hotline, we receive all of those tips. It goes to the group of us. So it goes to law enforcement, it goes to the service providers, and we all collaborate on who's the best person to reach out to these potential victims. And sometimes it's law enforcement because there's a safety issue, or sometimes it's going to be our service provider partners. But I'll let Dave, do you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, no, we are given 3 hours in the Erie County Academy with the basic recruits to present on human trafficking, which is actually an hour more than DCJS requires for basic police recruits. And we spend a lot of time talking to the recruits about not only the indicators of trafficking and both sex trafficking and labor trafficking, but we spend a lot of time talking about, and I specifically mentioned that, nobody ever calls to say I'm being trafficked, right? Nobody, that's not a 911 call that's happening, right? So it's a very nuanced type of situation, right? So it's not like your burglary or assault call or something along those lines that is very apparent and very obvious. So I'm very specific with the recruits about, any call that you go on could ultimately wind up being related to a human trafficking situation, right? It could be a domestic incident. It could be a first aid call. It could be a shoplifting call, right? And it's about recognizing, a lot of the indicators that we talk about, and maybe asking a few pointed questions, right? And they're given a bunch of information as far as how we work with the Institute and that we work with the Institute, contact information. And we explain to them that, because of the level of investigation that is required in these cases, it's not something that a small local PD is maybe going to have the resources to dedicate to investigating these crimes. So, that's why there is a task force, right? And that's why there are partners from other local law enforcement agencies and federal partners as well, to really pull together resources to adequately look at these, at these crimes. And so, we definitely spend a lot of time with the recruits and talking about all of those things about trafficking and the indicators and, being cognizant of that, right? And I think a lot of the conversation is spent on, listen, this is not something that you're maybe going to run into on an even semi-regular basis, right? But this is something that you need to have in the back of your mind for that traffic stop or that domestic call that you're going to go on, and you're going to see something that just doesn't line up. Something, your spidey senses are going off there. The hair is standing on the back of your neck, right? And that's, that's where this training is really so important, right? To recall that, this may be something what's going on, and to, know who to make that referral to, so we can further an investigation and make those referrals, for services as well.
Thank you for stating the training and the extra training that the officers partake in, and try to identify these victims. But you know that Advocacy syndrome, they protect these, their captives. They protect them, and they feel that they won't tell on them because they feel sorry for them, or that presence of feeling like they love this individual, this person. And I've seen cases where they do send them into stores, or to steal, or to boost, or to or into prostitution, or to drug sales or drug use, and these numbers are shocking. And some of the people I have worked with, and I have brought the PATH organization on to present back in 2020, I believe, under Julie Palmer, who's working with sexual trafficking. And also I'm working with the church and the college at this present time about building homes and houses for these individuals that have been sexually trafficked, and to find sources of mentoring and counseling. So are there any projects or homes that you work with that we can bring these individuals to, or we can discuss that later time? Because I would like to speak with you to see how we can connect with this church and this college, who's really want to invest into Western New York about sexual trafficking, and see what we can do, together to try to stop this type of criminal act against our youth.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure Ann can give you my contact information. Like I mentioned in the beginning, like, we're happy to provide training, or if you wanted to do like some type of like a town hall meeting with the group, we're certainly happy to do that. So if Ann can give you my contact information, you can email me or call me, and I'll be happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm not going to hold any more time on the floor, but thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for reaching out to the city of Buffalo. It is very much needed here, as you can hear from my other board member, and just the presence of knowing that someone cares, and someone that have a program not to just detain these individuals, but to actually to try to mend them and current goals are far away, with their development and mentality. And the last point I just want to say is about, once these children receive an arrest, it's hard for them to get into a college facility, education, higher education. It's hard for them to receive funds to help to get to a college scholarship, or even a college degree. So somehow we can work to change that narrative also, so these individuals can get a second chance of something that they're a victim of. I think that we can make a difference.
You make I'm just going to jump in quick. You make an absolutely valid point, and I completely agree with you there. I think one of the things to keep in mind, and that, when we approach a lot of the victims that we encounter, in attempting to work with them and reach out to them, and kind of bridge that gap that is always there between law enforcement, right? That's one of the things that we talk about as well, when it can be very difficult for law enforcement sometimes to make connections, right? Because of past negative law enforcement interactions, right? And that's definitely a barrier that we have to work to overcome. And I know one of the things that we specifically talk about with these victims, right, is any type of criminal conviction, right, that they acquire, we'll call it, while they're in a trafficking situation. Like, there is current legislation in New York State that there's a process that they can petition through and go through to have their criminal record expunged. If there can be cause shown that was something that happened while they were in a trafficking situation. So that is definitely something that we are well aware of, and that we absolutely encourage our victims to know that, hey, listen, this is something that that's something that can be available to you, right, to help you on your way as you move forward.
Thank you. Thank you once again, like I said, for your work, and we'll work to get more of these different crimes expunged from their records. And there also is like parents that hustle their children, like go out to sell candy to help pay bills or to pay bills, you know, and those children are often on the streets and they get picked up also because they're looking for a way out of the situation that they're in. And so we can talk more later about it. I don't want to take up the whole time of the board members. I know they got deep reflections about this also. So, but let's connect and let's see where we can meet at.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Terrence Hurd. Next, Hope J. Any questions, comments?
I just want to say thank you for your very thorough presentation. I also would like to have your contact information in the event that I might have referrals to send your way. So if you could just make sure that we have that information.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Jennifer, Board Member Jennifer McCosey, you're up next.
Thank you, Dr. Evans-Brown. So yeah, I wanted to thank you as well for your presentation. I do have, many questions that I'd like to be able to present probably offline so as to respect time. But I do see when you say that you're being refunded and you have, to me, this is an opportunity in order to really engage with all of the law enforcement and really use your task force skill sets and services to connect with everyone. Like if you take on a large district like Buffalo, New York, and you're able to really implement programs and implement ways and strategies in which you can deal with the survivors, finding out referrals before folks are actually in the system, looking at all of the borders. You have the Peace Bridge, the Rainbow Bridge, and all of these other different areas that people can come into this. I represent a district where 87 languages are spoken in one high school alone. So what are what is the real diversity around how you make aware of the fact that you exist? There are folks who are, if you think about it, if you were to get all the officers that you train and you're really talking to them about what they could be possibly walking into, I'd love to know how you collect that data to know, are there any officers that are saying, do you check in with them after your initial presentation to them? Do you check in with them to see how many times they may have come across something like this? And instead of kind of leaving it up to their spidey senses, so you say, what are the check boxes that they need to follow? Like I'm literally going by what I'm hearing, and I'm very interested in how you go about it. I think it's an absolutely necessary program, and I would love to be able to figure out a way for you all to, I think the funding would come in abundance if you're able to tackle a district such as ours. I needed clarity around whether or not this presentation is like, okay, this is what we do, or whether or not this is what we do, how do we connect? Like, I'm not sure if that's where we're going with this. I'm looking to connect. How do we work with our current SROs? How do how would our SROs be able to be, check those boxes for those, what would raise spidey senses or what they may see? Our security guards who have relationships with our students that is beyond, like every school has security guards who know our kids. We have folks in the community who know our kids. So getting back to Board Member Kottman's point, like who are we reaching out to in the community in order to get referrals? Like this is all very, very much, on my mind, as well as just how we connect the dots. Like to me, this is a real opportunity to bridge some gaps that I know are not happening in ways that are, obvious. And you have, based on what you're saying to me, so many avenues to do so. And if it's happening, fantastic. I just wasn't seeing, the real connections in this presentation. And this is where I'm coming from with it. I appreciate everything that you're doing. I unfortunately have, I ran a neighborhood center in an area which was very diverse for many years, where we worked with students. And it wasn't until some of these youth were already gone before I knew what was happening and how it was happening. And those youth were being detained and have these charges, and essentially to find out that they were victims of this type of behavior and it was beyond their control, but their lives are now something they have to navigate in a way as if they committed some major crimes. So excuse my passion behind this, but I would really love to see how we can make very aware of for everybody in the surrounding area how this works, and you know, how we can refer folks to you. Thank you.
Okay, it sounds like Ann Botticelli wants to answer that.
Excuse me, I love the point you bring up, Mrs. McCosey. One of our goals tonight, and I know Mary probably wants to talk about this a little bit, before they can work with our staff, the task force is hopeful that the board can work towards some guidance and policies. So I think Mary wanted to talk a little bit about that, because this was originally initiated because we do want some training for staff members. But there's some preliminary work that I think the district will have to do first. And so Mary, if you want to address that.
Sure. And before I do that, can Aaliyah just speak a little bit to the services and our operations within the city of Buffalo?
Of course.
I'll be very, very brief. In response to Board Member Hurd and Board Member McCosey's kind of statements, you know, we're working all day, every day in the city. And I think that some of the collaborations that might be helpful for board members to be more aware of would be the extensive training that Dave and his law enforcement colleagues have done with Buffalo Police Departments, especially their Special Victims Unit, as they've been renamed, and the Child Advocacy Center. So I sit at the Child Advocacy Center weekly case reviews and other, other meetings in that space, as well as new collaborations with youth probation to make sure that we're not criminalizing youth in the city who are encountering law enforcement or are the kids that are trying to get those basic needs met. So every young person that touches any facet of youth probation, whether that be through PINS diversion, whether that's through an appearance ticket or formal probation, they're all screened for trafficking. And if they have any single indicator or more that they might be at risk, then those all get referred to my team so we can do a deeper dive in terms of assessment, link for services and other things, right? And so some of those services look like meeting young people's basic needs, right? We can't work on sobriety, we can't work on mental health, we can't work on better school attendance if a family or if a young person doesn't have a safe place to stay or they don't have food to eat, especially through this pandemic, right? We've been doing a lot of work with direct food access through grocery cards, through taking young people grocery shopping to meet those basic food needs, providing things like tampons and pads for the young women that we're working with, making sure that everybody in the household has clothes and winter coats, linking them with those resources for rental assistance, right? Because if we don't have those basic needs met, then families are going to be stuck in really bad spots and making hard decisions that we don't want anybody in our community making. So services, while we're doing a lot of that harm reduction, the building towards safety, how do we build skills to address conflicts that don't look like running away or, engaging in risky behavior, but we're starting really with those basic needs to be able to meet those. So we are working very closely with our partners in the city. And so I did want to speak in to say that as well. So Mary, did you want me to start talking about policy or do you want me to hand it back? My apologies.
Sure. I'm just going to say something before you start, Aaliyah. So
can the board finish asking their questions before we go into policy? I mean, we're halfway through the questions. I've been very patient, but I would like to continue with the question aspect before we go into policy. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lou Petrucci, and you're up next.
Why, thank you, Dr. Evans-Brown. So I've been sitting here patiently listening, and I will say for the full disclosure, I've given money to the International Institute for decades. They're one of my groups I give through the United Way, and I have for a long time. But I have to say that I have a lot of concerns here. So let me just start off by, whenever I go to one of these things, I always like to mention Jalen Griffin. Jalen Griffin was a City of Buffalo resident, went out walking his dog in 2020, came back, told his mom he'd be right back, hasn't been seen since. And there's a variety of children like that in the city of Buffalo. But I just want to keep Jalen Griffin's name out there as we move forward. So let me just start off. How many cases does your organization see, or do you estimate that there are in Western New York? We kind of missed that here, Terrence and I. So how many cases?
Of clients served last year, or in terms of open investigations? Could you clarify?
Open investigations, please.
I can speak to that. As of right now, we just got done compiling some of our statistics for this past grant reporting cycle. As of March of this reporting period, let me just pull it up really quick. Hold on, just wait. I don't want to misspeak here. Hang on,
sure.
All right, so as of March of this year, we had March 31st, there were 66 active investigations within our task force, right? So that would be federal partners, local partners that are part of our task force.
Okay, and how many of those were in Springville? Can you get that granular or not?
I don't have that specific statistic, sir.
Okay, so here's one of my concerns. So, and it's a two-part response. So first of all, 40% of all trafficked individuals aren't people of color. They are straight up African American. Even though African Americans only make about 13% of the population, 85% of the African American population in the city of Buffalo or in Erie counties in the city of Buffalo. One of the things that my friends will bring up to me is that oftentimes they feel that being a person of color, that when they go missing, they go to the bottom of the list. That priority is given to blonde-haired, blue-eyed cheerleaders and not to particularly young African-American women. And they really feel that they don't. They've gone to the point where they've actually formed websites like Black and Missing and other things because they have a real concern that they aren't getting the priority that they need. So I guess where my concern is that by choosing Springville Griffith, wonderful school district, but as opposed to Buffalo Public or maybe another district that has a higher percentage of African Americans where this is disproportionately impacted, that you really have given credence to your critics. Because you've picked really the school district where you had your SROs, not maybe where the problem is occurring. And that to me is a concern. I mean, that's why I'm, a little upset. Can you talk to you about the relationship with the Buffalo Police Department? Not just training, but the day-to-day, how you work with them on a day-to-day basis, how things go back and forth between the sheriffs, the police, and your program. I'm just kind of curious as how those agencies kind of all overlap. Someone comes, they give a referral, do they hand it off, do they keep it, is it the center, how is all this working together?
No, so we work hand in hand with the Buffalo Police. Now, although we don't have any dedicated members from the Buffalo Police Department on our task force, we still work with the Buffalo Police, and anytime that they request assistance, we are there to provide that assistance, not only just from the sheriff's office, but also our federal partners as well. Man, just as a matter of fact, today I was working on a case with a detective from Buffalo on a case that we're both kind of working together. So that those partnerships are there, and we're there for the Buffalo Police Department to assist them in every manner, shape, and form, just like we are for any of the other local agencies in Erie County.
Thank you. That's good to hear. It just concerns me that, dollars for this type of work are precious, and I want to go where they're going to have the biggest impact. And I don't know where I see that you're working together, but I don't know. I see this as a bigger problem, in the city of Buffalo. I just do.
Can I just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to make a point that we did not choose, like the task force itself did not choose Springville. This was a national organization, the National White Collar organization that came in, asked us to apply for this to be a part of this program. We don't receive any funding for this specific program in Springville. And we chose Springville because it was either going to be Springville, Alden, or what was, I can't remember the other school district now, Dave, but it was just going to be those three because that Erie County Sheriff's Office has SROs in those schools. So, and just so you know too, this is a
But it's
pilot.
the SROs that seem to be dictating where the program was going to be based, correct?
No, the SROs have nothing to do with it. It was just
But
the
you
sheriff's.
just said that this was picked because that's where the Sheriff's Department has their SROs. I'm missing
Right.
something here.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So listen, I just want to finish. So you understand, this is a pilot program. This is something new. This is nothing that anyone across the country is doing. We're one of 2 sites across the United States that are doing this program, and we're just getting started. So this is like something that we'd like to implement in Buffalo, right? But I mean, Buffalo is enormous, right? I mean, that's a whole entity of itself. And we started having this conversation back in the fall with Buffalo Public Schools because we wanted to get in and do some training, which leads to the next conversation, which is having internal policies and procedures within Buffalo Public Schools so that if there are referrals or if there is a disclosure, you know what happens. So we can come and train your SROs, we can come and train your guidance counselors, and I know Aaliyah has already done that, but you have to have internal procedures so that you know once you get all these people trained and they can identify youth that is vulnerable, what are the next steps? How is that going to be managed? And of course, that's nothing we can tell you what to do. That's however you want to manage that internally. Is that to go to a guidance counselor? Is that to go to your health teacher? I don't know the answer to those questions, but that's something that needs to be established before we can come in and train your SROs and then train your staff.
But
that makes
I thought
sense.
you said it does, but you said you did the training. So was it like a preliminary training for the training?
No. This was, Aaliyah, can you speak to that? The training that you did when I first started my job, I went to a training with, I believe, Aaliyah, it was you did training of guidance counselors?
Yeah, so I did just a kind of an introduction, a deep dive introduction into the dynamics of trafficking youth in Buffalo and Erie County for administrative professionals in the school districts locally, as well as one of the superintendent's days to a group of school counselors or perhaps guidance counselors in the city of Buffalo, maybe 2.5 or so years ago at this point. So we've done some training, but it hasn't been enough, and it hasn't prepared for what do we do and how do we support youth who are disclosing so it's handled appropriately so they don't get scared and choose to not disclose again for years.
Got you. Thank you very much. That's an important clarification. I appreciate it. And I don't want to, again, like my table mate here, I don't want to keep going on. I know other people have questions as well. So I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you, President Bertucci. And what I think what's important here is that we're starting somewhere. And I think I heard Dave mention that you had the task force. You obviously were successful and received another 3-year grant. So you're doing something good. I think the board, what we're looking at with the high numbers in Buffalo, that we can see where this task force could benefit Buffalo. And think about innovation, adding more new task force members, for example, adding more training to SROs in Buffalo schools, etc. That's all we're saying. And lastly, Board Member Paulette Woods, you're up.
I agree with what you just said to the members of the Western District of New York Human Trafficking Task Force. Please hear that each of the board members is saying to you, this is a critical issue. It is affecting a lot of children in the city of Buffalo. a lot of parents are concerned about their little girls walking through districts where there are sexual predators, sexual traffickers. It is a big problem. And I know personally parents who found out that while they thought their child was up in their bedroom safe, the child was being trafficked on through the internet on her laptop. And all night she would be performing, stripping to an audience on her laptop, and her mother could not understand why the child was tired and falling asleep and couldn't perform in schools. So I guess what we're all saying to you is that parents need training to recognize, oh my God, my daughter is facing this situation and being trafficked right in my house on the internet. Teachers need training to recognize what you know and your folk know. Oh, that child is sleeping. Somebody need to talk to her because she's facing these issues. You said you received this grant in 2006. And for you not to be reaching out and finding a way to work with our 60 schools and educating, having even forums to educate the teachers, the guidance counselors. 2.5 years ago, with, I don't know, what, 20, 30 counselors. You're right, Buffalo's a big school, a big district. We need your help. We need you to expand, and we need you to come to where the problem is, Buffalo. That's all I want to say to you, because I have to deal with the parents who don't know how to deal with the situation. And I would also like your phone number and information so we can refer some of the parents that we do know about to you for help. But you definitely need to expand, and we welcome your cooperation and your work.
Good work. Thank you. I don't see any more hands. Ann Botticelli, you want to sum everything up? I know you talked about policy.
Yes, so I do believe we need to put some internal procedures into place. And once we have agreed on what those are, the task force is more than willing to work with us and train our staff, because we know that we want health teachers, phys ed teachers to be prepared to share information in class. We want our guidance counselors, our social workers, our psychologists to be able to support students. We want to train our security staff. And obviously SROs, I think, have already started working with the Sheriff's Department. But we do want to expand so that we have that support model in place. So I think a future conversation for the board would be whether a policy is necessary at your level, and then we can create internal procedures, to Mary's point, so that people know what the steps are that they have to follow if they, based on the training they receive, if they do identify a particular situation. I don't know if Mary wanted to add anything.
No, that was perfect. Yep.
So I have a question. Madam Chair.
Okay.
So how does this differ from any other situation where our staff would be trained to identify an educational neglect or abuse or something like that? How does this differ in the request for a policy? What are you looking for specifically in a policy or procedures? Because my understanding is that by law, under the Dignity for All Students Act, as well as FERPA, that covers pretty much most of any situation that we can encounter that impacts children in a broad way. So what are you looking for specifically, Ann? I guess, Ms. Botticelli, what are you specifically looking for? Because I think I probably, would like to know to try to see if I can help crafted or whatever.
Aaliyah, can you speak to that?
We're working with school districts and large providers, coming up with a policy or identifying, even clarifying in existing policy that when a disclosure is made, that safe adult who hears the disclosure knows what to do with that information, so the information doesn't stop right there. First of all, I think part of it is that idea of that what happens with that disclosure path. You know, if there's a person legally responsible for the trafficking, who's in charge of making the child protection report, so that might already fit in that existing protocol. But really looking at a disclosure pathway and then a plan for training, right? Who's going to attend the training, who's responsible for attending the training, and then what does accountability look like internally, so you know that those protocols are happening and taking place. You know, we hear from survivors of all ages that the hardest part of their search for help experience is when they've told someone and they didn't know what to do, or they told someone and felt judged or not believed, or they told somebody and they didn't do anything to help. And so that's what we want to make sure, that when we're moving forward in a direction that's going to be, as identified by survivors, as helpful as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any other questions? Who is that cute little girl right there with you, Dave?
Yeah, that is my baby girl who just woke up from her nap.
Oh, she's adorable.
Hi.
Hi.
Say hi.
Hi there. What's your name? What's your name?
Everly. Her name is Everly.
Everly.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so we have one more hand up, Jen McCosey.
I just want to stress, since we're talking about this publicly and with Ann on the line, that when we do trainings and something like this, again, I see as an opportunity to really put money and resources towards something that can be bridged across, you know, everywhere, that we look into how we make everyone aware. Like everything that you spoke to after my question was something I didn't get previously and wasn't sure was even in place. So how does all that, you know, become something that everybody is aware of in the community? Because it's a plethora of things that you do have going on that we weren't aware of. And then also the follow-up from the trainings, right? Do you do the trainings and then you're there, you do the training, and then it's on us to show you what we did or what we didn't do? Do you continually come back? What if we have teachers or security guards who are the entrusted ones of these students? Do they have specific resources they can reach out to, because they're the only people that these students will trust? You know what I mean? Like those type of things I would like to know, you know, not in this call, but when I reach out, I just want to put it out there publicly. Our students, they latch on to who they can trust, if they can even find someone. So what are the supports in place for those people who do identify and we know that the student will not talk too much to anyone else? Like, what do you offer those people? I guess is you know, what I'd like to know as we move forward with how we go about this and set up the protocols and the structure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about ways to support trusted adults.
That's a very good question. We're going to need to wrap up this session because we do have another session, but there's a hand in City Hall. Is that you, Board Member Terrence, or President Batiste?
Yes, it is.
Or both?
Mr. Hurd.
Okay, Mr. Hurd.
Yes, I just have one question. I was hoping somebody would ask the question. Do you have a plan, or have you comprised a plan to address the needs in the city of Buffalo? As far as, I mean, what would be your targeted areas? Would it be like the zip codes, the schools? Would it be, what are your plans for putting literature out to the stakeholders in the city of Buffalo? Are you planning community forums? Is it just like, how you plan to announce your program here in the city of Buffalo and work in our district and work with the schools in the community? Or is it something that's still in the planning phase?
It's quite frankly, I mean, we have a federal grant, so we have to be very careful on how we spend our money. So, I mean, as far as like pamphlets go, like we don't do a lot of that. We have a website that I just developed in the last couple of years But it's more about relationships. And that's why the DOJ has set up this structure, right? So the more relationships we have, the more communication we have with others, that's how we get the word out, especially with, of course, our law enforcement partners, the medical community, but we only have so much capacity, right? So, we're kind of doing the best we can. Ali, I can't speak off the top of my head, but of how many partners that they have, that the International Institute of Buffalo, that they work with. They have like a community network of comprehensive services where they work with agencies all across the county and also the 17 counties of our district. So we're covering a wide area. So we're kind of limited in our funding, and we have oversight in how we spend our funding. We don't do any fundraising at all. We completely rely on the funding that we receive from the federal government. So, but it's about relationship building. And my position is new. My position, I was just funded in 2019. So there's just one of me, and I'm kind of, setting, working, taking the steps to just expand our membership, extend our partnerships. But as you can see, it's one step at a time. And we're just extremely,
I get it.
yeah, we're so extremely, yeah. And we want to do whatever we can to assist you. And I want to make sure that I put that into place as best I can. But this is the first step right now, tonight, right? So.
Okay, you're listed as the Human Trafficking Task Force. So what's your caseload at this time?
Which are, it's like open investigations.
66.
66. Dave said it earlier.
It was 66.
So like
county,
right.
Okay.
Well, no, that would
right.
include.
That would be 66 active. Yeah, the 66 active cases, and that's anything that falls within the purview of the Western District, right? So not every single one of those cases are going to be within Erie County. Some of those cases may be outside of Erie County. As to specifically where and how many, I don't have that specific information handy. But again, that's just kind of a snapshot of what we have presently, right? But I mean, there's constantly tips and cases that are coming in, and as we go through them, right? Some are verified, and yes, this is a continuing and ongoing investigation, and some are determined to be unfounded, or you can't proceed with the investigation, right? And so then those kind of close out, right? But there's always a constant flow of tips that are coming in from a variety of sources that we're sorting through. And again, you guys raised very valid points, and I echo your sentiments about this issue being very much within the city of Buffalo and the youth in the city of Buffalo, right? And I think if there's anything that you folks can understand as well, everything that we're all fighting, right? We're all fighting a battle for resources, right? And that's something that on our side of things we're also fighting as well, right? And so, as far as capacity, that's really where our limitations wind up being, right? It's not with anything other than that, right? There's only so many cases that can be investigated by a specific number of investigators. There's only so many folks that can be assisted, by a certain number of programs and social workers. I'm being pulled in another direction here. But I think, right, we always have that door open, right? And I speak for the Institute, and I speak for myself as well on the law enforcement side. We always want more partners, right? Because there is more than enough work to go around. And the more partners that we have at the table, the better of a job, more complete, more thorough job we'll be able to do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap up this session, and I think it would behoove us not to invite this team back again, and at some point, once we marinate the information that has been brought upon us today, it's not going away. We know that this issue of human trafficking, and so I think it's going to be on all of our radar. And so let's do this again with maybe some new strategic planning that we can, widen the spectrum of services in the city of Buffalo. So with that, I'm going to close out this session. Thank you very much, Mary and your team. And we Godspeed to all of you. It's hard work.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
You're
us.
welcome.
Great hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams, did you have any ending words? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think they've gone off. But
okay.
What I heard is a lot of passion surrounding this project, and I think this is a great beginning.
Yes.
It's a start. Them showing up tonight and sharing just, some basics on where they are and being open to working collectively with us. I think it's a good beginning.
I agree. Thank you so much. So now we can take 5 minutes, if you like, before this last segment, special education agency placements and requirements, with Kim Hosher. It looks like everybody agreed. So we'll take 5 minutes and come back, Kim.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's come back at 7:30 sharp. It's 7:18 now, okay? How you doing, Kim?
I'm doing well. How are you, Dr. Evans Brown?
I'm good. I can't complain. You have a slide presentation?
Yes, I do. Admir was going to put it up for me.
Okay. So I think people have exactly 1 minute
Okay.
to get back. We're doing good with time. What do you think, Dr. Williams?
I think so. It's a little better, getting better.
It's getting better.
And a lot was shared tonight, so.
It was very robust information too.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we have a passion for our children being trafficked, human trafficked.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh my
We
God.
all do. We all do. It's so
It's
scary.
like the worst. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one name Lou put out there, Jalen Griffin.
Yeah.
So sad.
It is, Dr. Evans. You know, he just walking his dog, drops off the dog, goes back out to play. Could be any child in the city of Buffalo. And now and now no one knows where he's been for the last 2 years. So.
Oh, 2 years. Oh, was that the 12-year-old? Was it 12?
Yeah, I believe so.
remember
Yeah.
that case. I remember that.
Yeah. That's why when I had the opportunity, I wanted to mention him so he doesn't, so that he's still in the collective memory out there. So hopefully.
Mhm. Absolutely. Hi, Carl.
Motion for Brittany Gardner that we support for release.
Who's Brittany Gardner?
Oh, she's the basketball player.
Oh, I should know
I mean,
that.
I don't know if it's a little
I
outside
don't think
of
she is.
scope, but I mean, you could do it, certainly. I mean. I don't
Okay,
know.
looks like people are heading back. Paulette's back.
Putin will put you on his list, Terrence.
Pardon me?
Putin will put you on his list.
Yeah. Sure you're gonna
Jen's
get on
back.
your computers.
I'm on my list already, so.
No, I mean,
5 of us are here.
I wouldn't
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
think we'd be minimal. It's a statement. It's a statement.
That's good.
That we support WNBA in their attempts to have her freed.
Let me know when you want to go live, Dr. Evans. I'll let Amir know.
Okay, it seemed like there's a couple of people still. I saw Janet and she left.
So we are live right now, Dr. Evans Brown.
Oh, okay. All right, so welcome back. The last section, we'll be talking about special ed, and I'm going to shoot it over to Dr. Williams to introduce her staff for this section.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Evans Brown. Tonight we have with us Ann Botticelli, who is our Chief Academic Officer, and she oversees the Division of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction, and one of her assistant superintendents, Kim Holscher, who oversees specifically special education, is going to be sharing a presentation tonight on how we're meeting the needs of some of our most needy students. And I believe her presentation is going to be focusing quite a bit on some of our agency deserving or, agency needing students and what we're doing to support that. And she's also going to talk about where we're going as far as some of our next steps and some of her plans for moving the department forward and meeting the needs of our students. So I will turn things over to our Chief Academic Officer, Ann Botticelli, so that she and Kim can get started with their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Williams, you summed it up nicely. Ms. Holscher is going to be talking a bit about agency, just giving us an understanding of what that means and how it relates to the students in the Buffalo Public Schools. And then she's also going to touch on some of the initiatives that we have in place right now to support all the special education students, and then speak specifically to your questions related to her work. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to ask Admir to put up the presentation if he could. And while we're waiting for that, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight. As Dr. Williams and Ann Botticelli said, I am going to go over briefly what the agency placements look like in our district and then go over some of our initiatives. If I could have the next slide, please. So obviously we in the Division of Special Education are very concerned with moving to the next level with the services for our neediest children and families. And we have a lot of initiatives going on that we do believe will do exactly that. Next slide, please. And then one more slide, please. Thank you. So we currently have children in about 16 different agencies in the Buffalo area. Each of the agencies where our children are serviced is a state-approved agency, and they meet certain certifications to service certain classifications of students. So there are only certain types of students that each one of these agencies can take. And our students, when we refer them, have to meet their criteria to be eligible to be serviced in that agency. So there is about 5 of those 16 agencies that really look at students with autism, or 5 to 7 agencies that look at servicing students with autism, and really look at age-wise from 5 to 21. Most of our agencies do service kids ages 5 to 21. There's approximately another 5 agencies that really look at our students who are very challenged academically and meet the requirements for New York State alternate assessment, and around 6 agencies that support students with challenging behaviors. And the bulk of the agencies that serve our students, we are sending students who are classified with an emotional disability or students with autism to these agency placements. There are definitely other classifications that are being serviced by other agencies, but the bulk of our students are students with autism or other health impaired, which really does incorporate a classification of autism as well, or students with emotional disabilities. There are currently just slightly over 700 Buffalo Public School students who are serviced in these agency settings. So if you look at that, we have about 160 of those students that are students with autism. Another 107 are students that are classified as other health impaired, and another 277 are classified as students with an emotional disturbance. So that really does make up the bulk of the students that are in those agencies. There are students also that are serviced by places like St. Mary's School for the Deaf. We have about 17 students who are classified as students with a hearing impairment. We have students who are intellectually disabled, who are the students who are being serviced in the facilities where NYSA is the level of service. There's about 42 students there, and another 93 who are multiply disabled. So while these agencies are servicing a great number of students with various classifications, again, we are generally sending students because of their challenging behaviors or their intense needs as students with autism. So the agencies where we tend to send most of our students are Falk. We have a lot of students in Falk. Falk has sites around the city. They have 4 different sites around the city, as well as some in our own BPS locations. We send also a lot of students to Cannelison Center for Learning, Gateway, Longview, and then the Baker programs. Baker recently started a new intensive program that really is accepting students that are typically very hard to place. And by that I mean that students where there are not many facilities that really feel that they could service their level of need. So we do have some students there as well. So one of the interesting things about the agencies is, unlike the Buffalo Public Schools, where we accept every student who comes to our door, agencies do not have to accept children. They can look at students and determine whether they feel that they're a fit for their agency, and they can reject students even if they have space available. Right now, there is a significant space crunch in the agencies. We probably have about 70 less students serviced in agencies at this point right now than we did at this point last year. And I do believe a lot of that has to do with the fact that the agencies are losing staff and finding it difficult to meet staffing needs, just as we are beginning to see in the Buffalo Public Schools as well. So while so many of our students are presenting with challenging needs after COVID, and they have mental health needs, they have behavioral needs, so many social emotional concerns, we actually have less options in agencies because they have less seats available right now. So that really puts us up to the task of meeting needs of our students in other ways. And I do believe that, you know, we are up to that challenge, and that there are many things that we have in place and will continue to strengthen and put in place so that we can meet the needs of students, even if they need an agency, but there is not an agency spot out there for them. Next slide, please. And one more slide, please. Thank you. So some of those initiatives that we're working on that are really working well for our students with disabilities is our Student Voice Initiative. And in this one, we're looking at really making sure that students have more of a say in what we are doing to service them in a special education setting. So really more of a voice in what their IEP looks like. We're also making sure that they have more of a choice in their high school options. So we're doing this by a couple things. First of all, our high school option meetings. We started this last year, and it's gone very well, where we meet with all of our students that are in our 15-to-1 settings and our 12-on-1 settings. We meet with them in October and November timeframe, so that by the time it is student application choice time, they really can make more informed decisions about what schools they would like to go to and what programs they would like to be involved in. So we go over with them the different differentiated CTE models that there are in the various schools, so that they can say, like, I would like, for example, performing arts is my first choice because I would like to be involved in theater maintenance, or whatever that program may be across the city. We are working to increase those options for our students as well, which I'll speak to in a few minutes. We started this year also talking to our 6th and 7th grade students about high school options, knowing that the sooner we present these options to students, the more informed their decisions will be when they actually have to fill out that high school choice application. We're seeing some really interesting trends with that. Some of our students that we're talking to this year, and we're actually wrapping up those meetings this Friday. We started in May, so there's May and June timeframe for our 6th and 7th graders. They're actually talking a lot about what they need to do themselves to improve their academic achievement, so that they can go into ICT settings and have even more options available to them. So it's really phenomenal and interesting to see how they're reacting to this, that they're feeling like they have, since they know in 6th grade and here again in 7th grade and then in 8th grade what their options are, that they're feeling more empowered to really try to make improvements so they can open up even more options for themselves. So with the current plan, they will actually hear about their high school options 3 times, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. And as we expand into other programs, our 611 and 811 students will have the same opportunities. Our Student Voice Initiative is really also around student voice in IEPs and in their IEP meeting. We had 20 schools last year, in this current year, I should say, that participated in this initiative and really got students much more involved in the process in their IEP meeting. Students are actually surveyed about their strengths, their areas of concern, how they learn best, what their interests are, and that information is then shared at an IEP meeting. This coming school year, we will be adding an additional 15 schools to this initiative, and also encouraging any other school who is not part of the original 20 or the next 15, they can certainly participate as well. We just actually today trained our speech teachers so that they now can be part of this program, and they can work with our students who are classified as speech impaired to make sure that they know what their school options are as well. So I have a couple fun quotes to read to you. We survey the students after these student outcome meetings, and just a couple comments that students like the best about having this opportunity to share their information and to then attend their IEP meeting to share it in the group. One student said, "I liked attending so that I know what I need to work on this year." Another said, "I like that people are asking for my ideas and not just telling me what I need to do." Another one said, "I love that people listened to me and included me in the conversation." One said, "I liked seeing my mom and teachers who support me working together." And still another that said, "I liked being treated as a young adult." So if we are really looking to teach self-advocacy skills for our students, this is a great way to do that. And that's something that is so important to us in the division, to make sure that we are providing opportunities for students to learn self-advocacy skills so that they can prepare themselves for post-secondary options and be more successful. So that is our Student Voice Initiative. Orton Gillingham is another initiative that I'm so excited about. I've been wanting this for years. Orton Gillingham is a research-based scientific approach to teaching reading and writing. It's very direct, systematic, and explicit, and it incorporates multisensory elements into the program. So this now is a methodology that will be available to so many of our students who have reading disabilities where other things may not be meeting their needs. To date, we have trained 253 teachers on special education teachers on Orton Gillingham. We're training teachers from K to 8, as well as all the reading teachers and literacy coaches. And beginning in the next school year, 22-23, we are adding kindergarten teachers and the ENL teachers as well, so that so many of our teachers will be trained that this will definitely be an intervention that we will be able to provide to any student who needs it. Next slide, please. Thank you. Calming corners and sensory kits are another really exciting thing. I talked to parents at CPAC about this a couple weeks ago, and they love the idea and actually have asked that we expand this. This is a tool for the district to use to help students assist with self-regulation. There are many students who have difficulty with regulating their behavior or regulating their emotions and need some way to be able to do that by using calming tools or different furniture in the room that allows them to do this. So what the calming corners and sensory kits are supplies, tools, and furniture that we currently have ordered for all of our special class settings, and are also looking to expand that to all of our integrated co-teaching settings, as well as our pre-K settings as well across the district. And these sensory kits and calming corners have materials such as like a bubble tube that is in the corner of the room that is very calming. So if a student feels like they need just to sit in the back of the room and look at this bubble tube, it really just helps them de-escalate or to bring some calmness to themselves. We have noise canceling headphones for students who are reacting to the sounds around them. Things like foam rollers for students who need some sort of sensory input. It's literally a roller that you can just roll, like a foam roller that you can roll up and down the child's back to give them that weight and sensory input that they need to calm down. We have gel cushions and fidget tools that we're ordering. There's a transformer sack that a student can actually get in and wrap around themselves to give them that feeling of like calmness and security so that they're able to self-regulate and bring themselves back to the lesson that the teacher is working on with them. So it is we've seen some great results in the classes that we have it in so far. Teachers are reporting that students are really using the materials to help calm themselves, which is why we're excited about putting in so many more classrooms. We will be asking teachers to track data around this as well so that we can see how that is helping students to de-escalate and to be able to engage in the lessons more, because we have the tools and the materials available that they need to help them with that. So for our students that I referenced earlier that may not get that agency placement, these are the types of things that we want to make sure we have provided in our classrooms so that we can address their behavioral needs and their social emotional needs, and we can meet their needs in the Buffalo Public Schools. Second step is a curriculum that's currently in place in our pre-K classes, I believe, and we are going to expand this so that we have it across grade levels. Second step is a research-based social emotional learning curriculum that helps students to learn and practice skills like empathy, problem solving, and managing their emotions. So we're purchasing these for our social workers so they can use these in small groups with students and help students who need some assistance with some of these skills. Next slide, please. So we are also doing a lot to service our students with autism. That is a population of students that is growing significantly in the district. Next year, we are slated to have around 15 special class settings in kindergarten alone for students with autism. And as I shared with you a couple minutes ago, that is also a population where we have a significant number of students in agency settings as well. So to make sure we're addressing the needs of that population of students, we have a contract with Canisius College, and they're implementing a school max program. And that program is really geared towards supporting students with autism who are higher functioning. And their criteria for higher functioning really just means a student who has an IQ of 70 or above and are not New York State alternate assessment. That is a multi-component intervention program where the focus is on helping students with social knowledge, social skills, communication skills, recognizing different emotions, not only for themselves, but recognizing the emotions that other people are exhibiting, as well as other social emotional learning. So they are currently in school 17 and will be expanding to another school next year, and training staff on this program as well as working with students to address some of those needs. We also have a contract with Damon. They are working with our students with autism. They went into several of our classrooms and did a needs assessment as to what training and strategies and supports we needed in our classes for students with autism. So they will be expanding next year into many more classrooms and working directly with teachers and students to support these classrooms. Damon is also offering a staff development module for us. They're creating several modules that the district will own after the creation of these modules, where we can use it with any staff. We can use these modules with parents, and it will really help us to train teachers, aides, anyone who would like the training on working with students with autism. And as we know, so many of those strategies work with other students as well. So I think that PD will be very beneficial. We are also expanding our differentiated CTE options for students. Our existing programs are in our 15-to-1 and 12-on-1 classes, but we are expanding into our 8-on-1 and 6-on-1 classes as well over the course of the next several years. That expansion began this year with career and financial management being put into place at MST and iPrep for our 8-on-1 and 6-on-1 students. And we are currently in the process of working with the CTE department to identify programs at additional schools. Next slide, please. And one more. So we want to continue to move this work forward. So to that end, there are several other projects that we're working on. We are working on purchasing a transition curriculum that will be in place in our high schools. And that really addresses transition in the IEP, which talks about student strengths and their abilities and what they would like for their future goals. So it teaches things like self-advocacy, helps students develop the skills that they need if they go into college afterwards, to be able to advocate for themselves and ask for the accommodations they may need to access college curriculum, or just career skills if they want to go right into a career. So we did put out an RFP. We have 3 bidders that are looking to provide transition curriculum for us. The scores for that are in process right now. So it's just a matter of a couple weeks before we know the successful bidder for our transition curriculum, and can give you much more information after we know who that will be. We are also working with the Division of Student Support to purchase a behavioral screener. And this screener will be given district-wide. It is a very quick way to assess student need. So it is a survey actually of students and teachers, and I believe it has a parental component as well, that helps us to identify students who are at risk for behaviors, or who are at risk for needing some social emotional support. While it's oftentimes easy to identify students who have externalizing behavior because we see those behaviors manifested in the classroom, it is easy to miss a student who is an internalizer, and we may not realize that they need support because they may be sitting quietly in the back of the classroom. So a behavioral screener will help us to identify those students so that we can provide any social emotional support that they need. We are also doing a lot with assistive technology. We have purchased, or are in the process of purchasing, C-pens, which are actually scanners that help students who have reading disabilities. So when they're doing independent work, they can scan the content with this certain pen, and it will read things to them. If they have questions about a vocabulary word, it has a dictionary component so that students can identify the meaning of the word. So this will help with comprehension and really helping develop independent reading skills for students who have a reading disability. We're purchasing Waverly headphones for our CSE chairs, which has the ability to translate meetings into other languages so that we can be more successful in meeting the needs of our of our parents and actually students who speak other languages other than English. We have purchased Go Talk 9s, which are for students that have limited or no speech at all. They are picture boards, and we can use those to communicate with students who have very limited or no speech. They're devices that can record some messages for students, We have these in place already, and we have for a while in the district on a more limited basis, but we're able now to purchase more assistive tech in this way to provide that for more students. We are trying a classroom amplification system in our grade K classrooms for students with autism. And that is a system that actually has research based showing that it increases engagement and performance for students because they can hear better, so they interact better. It actually amplifies what the teacher says. It amplifies how the students respond, so other students can hear everything going on, so that the teacher can hear what's going on. It has been shown to increase speech intelligibility, and it can be used not only in a large group in a classroom, but a small group as well. So that's something we're piloting in our kindergarten classes for students with autism to see if it has good results for our students. We also have increased the number of iPads available and have purchased that for our speech teachers. There are several apps available to speech teachers that they can only get through an iPad. So we are making sure that they have that technology available to them so they can work with our students more successfully as well. So that is just some of the technology that we're looking to put in place. We are also, and I'm very excited about this, moving all of our special education files and records to an electronic format. This will help with efficiency. It will really help us with making sure that all the right parties have the right reports and things that they need. And most importantly, will allow us to increase the confidentiality of records. So that is a huge project for us right now. And last thing I'd like to talk about right now is the welcome packets that we're putting in place for September. We want to make sure that parents feel very confident about what the special education process is, what it means. We want them to be able to make knowledgeable decisions and feel very comfortable in the process. So we will, at the beginning of each year, now be providing welcome packets to parents. It will include manuals. We just finished a committee on preschool education manual for parents that will make that process much easier to understand, making sure we're using parent-friendly terms and not getting caught up in jargon. We're tweaking several of our other manuals as well, our CSE manuals, things like that, so that our 504 manual. So those resources will be available to parents in this welcome packet. We'll provide information on CPAC, who parent members are. We want to be able to give them information on who their student support team personnel are, who is the psychologist assigned to the school their child is at, who is the social worker, who is the CSE chair that will be chairing their meetings, and also provide with them a list of video topics. We are in the process of developing a video library, and that will be short 5 and 10-minute videos that will be available to parents on many topics. We're trying to think of every topic we possibly can create a video for, that parents will have access to just answer their questions. To school age, CSE, what happens at an initial referral meeting, just about any topic around special ed that you can think of. We are working to create a video on so parents can go online and access that video library and watch at their leisure information on any topic that we have a video created for. So those are some of the projects that we're working on right now so that we can make sure we are meeting the many and varied needs of our students. So I'm open to any questions that you have.
Thank you, Kim. What a wealth of information you provided us tonight. So I'm going to start with the end of the alphabet. Board Member Paulette Woods, do you have any questions, comments for Kim?
I like the calming room, what you said about it. I have an autistic nephew, and he says he feels like things are just bubbling up inside of him. He can't sit still, and he needs to be able to go and jump and get the bubbles out. And your calming room is something that would give him a place that he can go and get those bubbles out and then go and sit back, because he's absolutely, he's like an Einstein. He's very brilliant, but he's autistic. So I like some of the different approaches that you're suggesting, and I do think they definitely will work. So excellent presentation, and this is one of the biggest areas, cost areas that we were looking at. This population was growing significantly, so I'm hoping you're going to have some answers to contain it. The other thing that you said about fault schools, we had a child who was terrorizing Mikowski School, and you don't have enough places for them. So I would hope that we could learn more about the process to get a child into a fault setting when there's just no way the school can handle her. That is definitely a problem.
Sure. Yeah, I understand for sure. So we refer students as part of the CSE process if a student is thought to be appropriate for an agency setting. We refer them to agencies that would meet that need. So for example, if it is a student with a behavior challenge, typically we would refer that student to Falk or Baker, Randolph, Gateway, those agencies that historically handle our behavior students. So we will make that referral, but oftentimes there is not a spot available. Or they may feel like the student does not fit their program and doesn't have to accept the student in. So making that referral to an agency does not necessarily mean that we are going to secure an agency spot for that child. So while that might be optimal, we do want to make sure that we have supports in place so that we in the district can meet the needs of that child, so that agency is not the only answer, and that we can do something to address the concerns and challenges that child is having.
Well, unfortunately, this child was a danger to herself, jumping off of rails and could not be contained. So it is definitely a concern to the principals that when they're faced with that situation and the child could get hurt and we could get sued, we need a better answer. Because that fault process, there just needs to be some way to either add more spaces or have an emergency procedure when it is literally a safety issue for not only the child, but some of the students she was attacking.
Yeah,
So help.
I understand, yeah.
Ms. Woods, if I may, at Dr. Williams' request, Kim is convening a task force to look at agency and see what we can do internally to improve our processes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a good point, Board Member Woods. And I think I heard him say that agencies, even if they had a spot, they can deny the child, unlike Buffalo Public Schools. So have you ran into that kind of situation, and what happens when?
So we have run into that because an agency can say this child is not a good fit for our program. And, you know, at the end of the day, if all of the agencies say that, we still have to find a way to service the child. So we do everything we can think of to meet that student's needs. You know, we make sure that we are placing them in a smaller class, implementing some of the supports that we have in place. We have hired recently 2 behavior specialists in our department and are actually looking to hire 2 more. And we send that support out as well to the school. So we send the behavior specialists out, they observe, they work with the teachers, they help to implement strategies. So we're looking to address it in any way we can to meet the needs of that student.
Okay, thank you for that. Louis, President Petrucci, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. Just two questions, Kim. First of all, thank you for you and your staff. I know that it's very rewarding, but sometimes it can be very challenging work as well, because so many of these factors are outside of your control. In that vein, I was just wondering, have you had any conversations with these agencies when they may be able to work at a higher capacity? Because I know that's been the biggest complaint that I've gotten is from parents who are waiting for agency placement.
Yeah, so in the past, if an agency has gone to the state, they have to go through a process with the state if they would like to expand. And the state will then come to us and say, what is the district need? And we've always supported that. You know, yes, we have district need for more spots. Let's say it's for, you know, students with an emotional disability, whatever that may be. So we will support agencies in that process when they're looking to expand. Unfortunately, right now, that is not the case because they're having staffing issues. So they're not looking to expand because they can't necessarily staff their existing classrooms.
Gotcha. And on a second one, just, and it might be for you, but it might be for Nate also, is that I know when the idea of paying parents to drive special needs children have come up, I've had parents call me stating that they would like for the district to transport their child. I was just wondering, has there been any discussions at CPAC or amongst you about transportation of some of our students?
Just on the level that we've talked about it in the district, like if there's parents who want to drive their children. We've had some parents who want to transport their student because of COVID and their concerns with, you know, what's going on in the bus. So we have had conversations and we talk to transportation often about some of the needs of our students, and we do work with Cheryl Kennedy. So on that vein, yes, but more so just, you know, just on the district, how the district has done it with Janet as well.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much, Kim. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Jennifer McCosey, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Kathy Evans Brown. How you doing today, Kim?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I have just a couple questions, and similar to along the lines of President Petrucci. As far as agency goes, now we know of the you know, the kind of roadblocks that are in place. Are there no other options as far as agency goes? Are there other agencies that maybe, you know, are we married to these agencies? Are there other opportunities as far as agency goes, is my first question. And my second is, I really appreciate how the student voice is being, you know, center of how we go about working with our youth. And from what I understand, it starts at 6th grade, but I'm looking to see how students are being addressed in the lower grades. Like when you're in speech and you're in physical therapy and all of these things. From my own son's personal experience, he had to figure out ways to explain to his peers why he's being pulled out. Take that kind of, you know, that's almost, it becomes almost a bullying factor if you don't address it right. What is in, I know that they speak on it during the sessions, but do you have these opportunities for even our youth, the babiest of babies? My son was doing all 3 of these therapies at pre-K level up until very recently. But, you know, I want to know how you get their voices and how their IEPs are coming into place and what it feels like for them and how they deal with their, you know, I mean, with their, say an ICT teacher, as my son has. Yeah, I really appreciate the student voice concept and really would like to see, you know, how do you engage the younger students, because that bullying aspect is very real when the kids are being pulled out.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So to address your first question about the agencies, we really use every agency that is in Buffalo. We have students in every single one of them. So, and we actually are fortunate in this area. We have a lot of choices. I know, like, for example, in Syracuse, I think they have like 2 or 3 agencies that their district is able to refer students to. So we do have some good choices. It's just that there's not always enough seats. As far as student voice, the high school options start at 6th grade. Student voice actually is much younger grades as well, though. So what we have teachers do at the younger grades is help it, let's say it's a younger student that, you know, can't read yet, for example. We have the teachers fill out that survey with the student. So we're making sure that the teacher is addressing what the student says works best for them. Because like you're saying, even the younger students, they know, right, how they learn best. They know what they like. They obviously have a lot of information about themselves. So we do incorporate that in the younger grades as well. I attended a CSE meeting a few weeks back, and the student was a 3rd grader. So regulation wise did not have to attend the meeting. But she did come because she wanted to talk about the survey she filled out, and she wanted to present at the meeting. And it was phenomenal because she had so much to say about, you know, how she learns best and what she wishes we would do to help her learn best. And she was just so well spoken, and it was just adorable, and it was so enlightening because she was only a 3rd grader, but she had a lot to add to her meeting. So I agree with you. The younger, the better, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Makosi. Next, we have Board Member Terrence Hurd. Questions, comments?
Ms. Brown. Yes, this is a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for an amazing presentation, Solicitor, and I'm happy that we're moving forward as a district and trying to resolve some of the issues we have with special education and children with special needs. Was this special education update done by the survey that was being conducted with Ann Benichali? Is this the result of the survey?
I'm not sure which survey.
I'm
not sure which survey you mean either, Mr. Hood. I'm sorry.
I mean, you were doing a study on children with special needs. I believe about 4 months ago. It was presented in the board package 4 or 5 months ago.
A survey?
It was a study, and I believe it had surveys in. Wasn't quite sure how the study was being conducted.
I can go back and take a look. We've been doing a lot of things to assess the needs of the department. We didn't necessarily have a particular survey that we used. We do send out a lot of different surveys for professional development needs. So we survey our staff, our administrators, our teachers to figure out how we can better serve them. So that might be part of what you're thinking about. But Kim also, she surveyed schools to see which schools wanted to participate in the student voice pilot. So that might also be something that you're thinking of. So that's how she found the first 20 schools in the cohort, and also how we're adding the additional 15.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're looking to add additional 15, and those will be selected by the district, or will district board members have a say-so in that selection about which schools they may need those services?
They actually, their schools had stepped up and said, we really want to do this.
Okay, that's wonderful. And we can somehow acknowledge those schools that stepped up. I would love just to embrace those leaders there at those schools that really see the need.
We can get you that information for sure.
Thank you. A couple of questions. I believe in accountability. You know, I have a older brother that's autistic that I raised, actually, you know, part raised, and I just see the needs that he went through his lifetime. And, you know, and going into adulthood and, you know, living in assisted living facilities, we really have to start, you know, from infant to toddlers, you know, understanding IEP and also going to higher education. It shows our accountability and what we're doing as a district. And I know that some other programs and like in charters, you know, don't address the issues that we do here in our district and the Buffalo Public Schools. So kudos to that. I believe in the intervention and the problem solving, and also managing emotions, those type of techniques, they very, very much needed. And also developing a shared path for success, putting into placement homes or placement facilities where they actually, these children and adults can actually work and, and feel useful. And thank you for the work that you're doing with Princess College and Damon College. Also, those are great reports that those institutions are, looking to help our students, in those sort of ways. But a couple of things like Mr. McCosey said about student voice, that's very important for these individuals, those that can speak and those that can't speak, just to, to hear some of the things that they have or see some of the conditions, that they deal with that you can see they might struggle with. I believe in that. But also let's work on this to attract them to our new unified sports program so that they can also, be involved athletically, and being meaningful with people, that they can identify with. And that will help stop, some of the stresses they got with bullying and, not feeling displaced or not feeling like they can fit in. So let's work with that unified sports program. And also I would like to see maybe possibly a floor or a building, a room or something dedicated to individuals with special needs that did great things in our community, so they can have that type of pride. Also look up to people, that made great accomplishments, maybe in the Special Olympics or in the industry. And I like to see them being recognized, more, so that they can feel, accepted, or they can, do other great things in the future and not just be isolated.
I love that idea. Thank you for that. Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Hurd. Before I go on, when you made that comment about inclusion, I remember probably about 9 years ago, I was working at a school. I'm not going to name the school, but I was a long-term sub there, and I oversaw eighth grade class that had 10 boys and 2 girls. That was my group. And my colleagues who saw me said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I didn't understand what they were saying, pretty much. They don't know I raised boys. But nevertheless, that was my group. And so throughout the course of the year, the principal would announce, or somebody would announce, that we're having a special activity in the auditorium. And my kids, they would never, say my room. So I was perplexed. So I called down to say, you didn't call 203, for example. "Oh, they're not on the list." I said, "Well, put them on the list," right? So they were put on the list, and I, of course, used my tactic to say, "Listen, we have something to prove. You're going to be on your best behavior, yeah. So we went down, and they were on their best behavior. So another incident happened shortly after that, maybe a couple of weeks later. One of the teachers owned some kind of ice cream truck, and he would bring his truck on school grounds, and the kids would, purchase stuff. They would never call my room. I'm like, "Hey, get together," right? So I took my kids down to get some ice cream as well. It was on my dime, but the point was they were never included. But I think from that experience, I made sure that my kids were included in the process. So I just needed to put that out, because I think sometimes our mindsets, not ours, but some people's mindsets, need to change. Because a kid have a disability, that doesn't mean he or she should not be included. So that's my point.
Absolutely.
So with that, Board Member Sharon Belton Cotman, you're up next.
Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it, because oftentimes I'm not quite clear what's going on with special ed. I just have one question. Were the parents able to see this presentation as well? The parent groups, have they seen this presentation?
So I give them updates at the CPAC meeting. I had one of our coaches, the special ed coach, do a whole presentation on the Common Corners and break boxes at the last session. And I report out with them every month on what's happening in special ed. So they have not seen this presentation, but they've heard all of this, you know, over the course of time.
Okay, thank you. That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see any other hands. I'm going to shift this back to Dr. Williams so she can close this section out.
I just want to thank Kim Holscher and Ann Botticelli and really the whole special ed department. It's hard work. It's a lot of work. They work, you know, really tirelessly with our principals and our parents. So I just want to thank you. And I think the presentation tonight was very informative. And I hope that the board members got, you know, an expanded understanding of some of the work that's going on within special ed right now and where we're going in the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. President Pertucci.
Thank you, Dr. Kathy Evans-Brown. At this point, members may have a motion to go into executive session for the following purposes. To discuss the employment and employment history of a specific board employee, to discuss collective negotiations with the BTF, and for the purpose of receiving sage legal advice.
So moved.
So moved, seconded by Ms. Felton-Cotman, seconded by Jim McCosey. Any questions? So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we will go into executive session. I will let Amir know. So thank you all for the presentation. And then we will report out after the executive session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ann.
everyone. Good night.
Oh, is that it? Oh, good.
Madam Superintendent, I don't know where you get all the energy.
Vitamins.
Yeah, I'm going to be marching down Main Street with 600 of your loving students on Flag Day.
Me too. Me too.
You're going to march with us?